I've never had legs like jelly like I did on that, during that fight, and that no big un will ever do what that did ever. End of.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.
Welcome to the Thinking Tackle Podcast. Now, if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Today, we are talking big carp, creativity, art, working in the industry, working outside the industry, and even a little bit of filmmaking, presumably with Jake the Heron Hughes.
Yeah.
Jake, thank you so much. I know it's not been too far for you to get here, but thank you for coming in.
Yep, no problem.
My first question to you is, mate, and it's an angle that I want to pursue on this pod, is can you catch big carp if you're a family man?
Very rarely, but you definitely can. I've got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it was definitely a game changer with the 2-year-old. Well, when she was born, that totally changed everything. Everyone had convinced me that, there's no difference between your first and your second. But that first child, Elodie, it took a little while to sort of fit that in. But as soon as we had a rhythm, I was fishing a big lake with, almost 200 acres, 30 carp in it. And 4 nights in, I'd managed to catch one. It was probably luck that it all happened at that time, but I didn't change my fishing for the kids. I probably just did a bit less of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about with the second one? That can't.
No, it's still going.
Oh,
it's
is it?
Still going? Yeah. It's just. I feel like I'm coming out of that hard bit now.
Yeah.
So it's finding the rhythm, and you're trying to find the rhythm of a massive life change. And as you know, there's not. Having kids, there's not much more of a life change than having a kid, is there?
No, people tell you that, don't they? But it sounds a bit hackneyed and cliched, but it is true. It is without doubt. It's the biggest change you probably go through, isn't it?
Yeah, it's you're forced to grow up overnight, and it took me a little while. I was young when I'm 30 now. We've got a child who's approaching 7, and there was a lot of growing up to do there, to the point where I think I did three-nighters over 3 months. So I just did one session a month, but there were 3-nighters, and my missus really did not like me being there. And I remember thinking, why don't she want me there? Yeah. I've always been fishing. And really but your missus needs you. And I didn't understand that at the time. But, through that sort of them 2 years or whatever, I learned that lesson. And I'm glad that I know that lesson now for our second child. But the difference is with the second one is it's a different challenge. You've got, it's hard to deal with one who wants your attention, the other who needs your attention because they both do, but she's a baby. But also you're going to go away a night a week. And also me and my missus work opposing shifts. So it is very much one-man band.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't realise how easy I had it with one.
Yeah.
Even though it was bloody hard, but the opposing shift thing means that currently with my fishing, we might talk about it, like we might not. I don't know what you want to talk about, but I'm getting up at 1:30 in the morning to bait up and stuff. And I'm actually used to getting up twice a week to bait up and once a week to go fishing between 1:30 and 3:30, let's say now. Whereas I used to actually lay in a bit, like with the first one, I go, first light, fuck it, Yeah. I'm not like that anymore, but I've got used to it. I'm used to, and I go to bed at midnight because my missus finishes works at midnight. So when she gets back, that's when I go to sleep. I can't sleep until she's there, and I've done my full day's graft. I get home, so I do my day's work. I get home. She homeschools our oldest child, Elodie. Decision we made fairly recently, and so she's got it harder than I've got it.
Wow. So she's working and then homeschooling in the day.
She's homeschooling.
Wow.
Then she drives to my work. I jump in the car, or it depends on the day. Sometimes I go home, but she drives to my work. I jump in her car. She jumps in the smelly Astra with all the fishing gear in it. She drives a mile around the corner to her work. She drives for Ricardo, drives vans and whatever, It's 21st century. They found a way of taxing men and women. So, we've got to do that to get the money in. She does her day's work till midnight. I get home, walk the dog, make the dinner, bath them, put them to bed. And then at about 10:30, order a curry or whatever, you know what I mean?
Generally, by the look of your Instagram, you order a curry, don't you?
Make it from scratch or order it depending on the day. So yeah, that's what my day looks like at the minute. So if I want to bait up, it's when they're all asleep. It sort of has always been like that to some extent, but yeah, I don't know what it is.
It's an incredible, I didn't realise quite how much you have to go through to get your fix.
it doesn't, I smile when I'm going down the lake. I don't mean to sound like, I'm really keen and, almost like from an arrogant perspective, but there's something about driving to the lake and then getting there and putting 4 buckets in before work or whatever as the sun's coming up, and you just know no one else is doing it. When I'm at the lake, I ain't getting up at first light. I'm doing a night. I'm leaving at sort of 6:30, 7 in the morning. So I'm getting as much sleep as I can. If I've got to get up at 6 o'clock and quickly pack up, I'm not doing the legwork that some other anglers might do, or that I'm not watching and all that sort of stuff late into the night and early in the morning. So I've got to find other ways of doing it, and sometimes it's fruitful and sometimes it's not.
So does that mean that your success or otherwise is largely dependent on those baiting missions and working at an area?
Depends on the lake. I mean, and it depends on my mindset as well. Like, so at the minute where I'm working, I've changed jobs after doing the same thing for over a decade. I've changed 3 jobs in 2 years. And I'm a little bit sort of mentally unsettled, and that isn't a negative thing, but I'm not calm. Like, people have met me recently who might have, seen me on a stupid Instagram story, and they've met me through the shop or whatever where I'm currently working, and they'll say, I thought you was really calm, but you're really scatty and you just look wired. Yeah. It's like, well, I'm 50% calm and 50% wired, and it depends on where you see me. Generally, as having kids, you're never running on 100% sleep. In fact, you're never running on 60%. You're never sleeping. And then when you are away, you've always got that thing ticking in the back of your mind. You can't be that young, free child anymore who's going fishing or whatever, because you've always got that thing that, there's that thing that I need to protect that I'm not there for. And it's always in the back of your mind, no matter what. So, you're changing all the time. And I am calm at times, but during the day I'm heavily caffeinated because I haven't slept, and
with its attendant anxiety that
exactly. So I do come across a bit wired and whatever else, and I probably am, like, even when I am calm, I'm probably more wired than what most people are in my personality, but I don't know where I was going with it, but the point I was trying to make, I think I've made.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of the support you must therefore have from the missus, I mean, because I presume she doesn't have something as quite as selfish as fishing.
No.
That compels her to leave the house for a night. And leave you in charge.
I've explained, I think, to her that you've got a maternal instinct. You wanted children. Mm-hmm. Men don't really have that, or at least the men that I know and I don't have that. We sort of, if we're good people, we want to keep our other halves happy because that makes us happy. And it's not like happy wife, happy life. It is, I want to be happy, and in order for me to be happy, you've got to be happy. Mm-hmm. I'm the male, I'm the protector, I'm the masculine, you're the feminine. If you want to birth children because that makes you happy, then fine. And you're making a massive sacrifice to some extent, which is obviously repaid for greatly. But then they've got to make some sacrifice as well. And for them, it's, I am a man, and
allowing you to go out hunting.
I'm going hunting.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, in terms of the way that's had to fit in around your life, has that changed? Because, like you say, you have changed jobs.
Yeah,
you were very settled in hairdressing, barbering. What do you call it? Barbering,
yeah.
Right? For a long time, and it's been a period of turbulence. Has that affected your ability to fish the way you wanted to fish?
Yeah, of course it has. It's affected it, but not necessarily negatively. I think it depends on, I have times where I look for problems and times where I look for solutions, and it depends on where I'm at. I think we all do. But if I'm looking for solutions, which I feel like I currently am, it can really strive you to do what the most that you can. Mm-hmm. And at the minute, I'm doing all them things. I'm not getting the results that I want. I am getting results. I'm catching, but I'm not a bites angler anyway. I don't look at how many I've caught at the end of the year and I'm happy or sad with that. But you definitely want to see a big one every now and then in the bottom of your net.
That's what's motivating you. If bites don't make you happy or sad, what is it that, if you could pinpoint that?
It depends on the lake. I mean, I mentioned to you earlier, like having a relationship with a lake. And that is the most important thing, is once you finish with that lake, you walk around it, or you drive past the junction on the M25 or wherever, mm-hmm. or a picture comes up and this sort of, there's a spark there or something, and you go, bloody hell, that was a good time. Do you know what I mean? And that isn't necessarily about what you catch, because I've had lakes where I've caught 28-pound commons for, you know, a spring and then another spring, then another spring, and that period is just great, and I look forward to that spring. And you might be rewarded with something spectacular, you might not, but it doesn't matter. You know, you're enjoying every minute of it. If you're chasing a big one, which, you know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and it's always an accident. Like where I'm currently fishing, I didn't go there for that fish, but now I'm there for that fish. And, you know, that you've really got to have a good relationship with a lake for that to work.
And I guess if your relationship with a lake is good, then you'll never leave empty-handed.
No, definitely not, because you're not necessarily there just for the carp. And I fish lakes where you are there just for the carp. And
it's pretty soulless, that, isn't it?
Can be soulless, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great when you catch it and whatever, but
it always feels like you've escaped at that point.
Escape? What's the point? If you're trying to escape, why are you doing it? You know, and I've done that, but I think it's upon reflection you realise you were trying to escape.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can switch your head a bit and go, you know what? They were great times. I just failed to realise it. And I think that's sort of the period that I'm going through right now. Is these are really good times, and I'm realising it, and that's why I'm happy to go through that effort.
I think when we're going to talk a bit about the specifics about how you're fitting big carp fishing in around life, but I think for context, let's talk a bit about where you are now, because there's lots to talk about in terms of what you've done. There's some really interesting stuff. But at the moment, you're fishing a big lake in the Lea Valley.
Yeah.
And there's a particular reason that you're there. And I think it's an interesting reason, because not many people of your age still care about the sort of fishing that this particular fish, let's say, inspires. Can you give us a bit of context as to what's making you tick at the moment?
At the moment, yeah. So just from a general view of what makes me tick, well, I suppose it's something that really drives you. And like I said, that could be 28-pound commons, but maybe that's more the lake than it is the fish. Currently, there's, you know, I'm after a fish that's well known in the Lea Valley, one of the last of the, I'm not entirely sure on the strain, but one of the last of a certain type of carp. And last year, or the year before, sorry, I fished for a carp that was an old one in the Lea Valley that I really wanted to catch. And I caught that, and I thought, right, I'm done with the Lea Valley now. I need to go elsewhere. You know, the Lea Valley is somewhere that I've dipped in. Before that, I hadn't fished the Lea Valley for many years. I'd fished more elsewhere. But, you know, I fished in 2012, I fished Faber for a very short period. I didn't drive and stuff. I only had 2 rods. And, you know.
You didn't drive, you've got 2 rods, you fished Glen Faber, which is the toughest pit in the valley. Like
2011 it was. Because, you know, but I actually walked around the lake I'm currently fishing there then, and it was full of big uns. Like it was
peaking.
Not, yeah, without a doubt. It weren't a super water, but it was, because logistically, it was still hard back then, but it was certainly had a stock to die for. I mean, a lot of them are Simos, but they were nice old fat Simos.
Yeah,
you know.
round-tailed grey, you know, lovely fish.
I think they were like a batch of Simos before a batch of Simos that went quite very plain. So yeah, the fish I'm after right now is you know, you had bent head from Faber, slopey head in Bowyers. You had the Paynes Lane big, and I'm not sure of the name of it. There was quite a few of these fish. I've got an album on my phone of them. I can't think of the names right now, but the one I'm currently fishing for is the last one. It's Moonscale. You know, it is literally once that's gone, they don't exist anymore. You know, the scales look like they're stuck on.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that I think they're dinks. Like
they could well be.
Look like
I always
dinks,
called them dinks,
which is fair. Yeah. You know, I understand. You know, you're operating in that valley with people who know a lot about these fish. They might not think that from the outside they look a bit dinky.
They do look very, very dinky. I was told that no, mate, they're not. They're Fisher's Pond fish.
Maybe,
but
they don't look like them.
They don't look like Fisher's Pond fish to me. And he said, no, look, this is when they were stocked. There were the other ones like L's and whatnot, but there was 2 or 3 Fisher's Pond fish stocked there, and there. And Moonscale was one of them. But it looks very, very different to a Fisher's Pond fish to me. But who knows? You know,
why in an era where, you know, there are big carp everywhere we turn, should one fish interest you over and above, you know, the many you could turn your attentions to?
It's a tricky question. Probably because of where I grew up fishing and the ideologies that were probably sort of wedged into me to some extent. Potentially that. I'm not sure. It might not be that at all. It could just be that I tell you what, when I was a kid, I used to walk around Frogmore before I'd caught anything out of it, and I'd see this mare's tail weed coming up. It's like thick Canadian and deep margins, crystal clear. And I used to look down and I was scared of what was in there. And when occasionally you'd see, I remember seeing the toadless leather swim down a bay, and an 18-pound odd common, and Brad had pointed out, my friend had pointed out what it was and stuff. And to me, I mean, just going before that, the first sort of instance of that was down Riverside Road. It's like a match lake. And Brad said he's going to fish for floaters. I've got a lot to thank for Brad for this moment, but he specifically went after fishing for anything. He'd gone and specifically targeted these fish at the bottom of this bay, and they were the big ones, and there was a no stalking rule on there, but Brad went stalking, and I followed Brad, and I'd only been fishing for 2 months or whatever at the time, and I'd caught some little bits and bobs. But I remember Brad chucking out a double dog biscuit, and I'd seen Matt Hayes do it, but the first time I'd seen these blue things come up, and I was like, what the fuck are they? There's something changed in me there and then, and I wanted to fish for carp, and I didn't. I'd done I don't know, it was probably only 2 years of whatever we fished for, but I really wanted to fish for them. And from then to now, I want something that I hold to go for. What the fuck is that? And there's not many out there like that. End of. Mm-hmm. There just isn't, and that is one of those. I don't even know if the Burfield Common would do it for me. I mean, I ain't got the energy, the time, the nothing to even want to go there. Yeah. But where I'm fishing right now is logistically very similar. It's bays, it's big sheets of water, it's islands and out of bounds, and pipe to another 12 acres of whatever. And it is you're parking miles away and stuff. It's a pain in the arse. So something is driving me to fish for that fish. Mm-hmm. And if the Burfield Common, for example, was in this lake, would I fish for it? I don't think I would. If I know it hasn't been caught much, but it's a common for a start. Amazing. I think if I did catch it, I'd be over. Obviously, but I'm not slagging it at all, because to some people it is their version of this. It's
personal, isn't it? It's absolutely personal. And Mooney is in your sort of world, isn't it?
It's in my world. I think the thing that's done it for me is that I've been close enough for it to poke it in the eye, and I haven't with the Burfield Common, and that's probably the reason. And that's probably a terrible example, but Moonscale for me, I've seen the crust on it, or whatever you want to call it. I've seen that thick layer of something that builds up when they get really old. I've seen the shadow in its scales along its back, that you don't get to see very often in the water with a target fish, but also there's not many carp in there that have that in the world that mm-hmm. are that old to where their scales have sunken in. I've seen all of that. I've seen its bulging eye, and when you look at something in the eye, well, I've got to catch you now, Yeah. And if it don't happen, it don't happen. I'm not, at the end of the day, I've got far more important things to worry about, but I will try my best.
Of course, because it will probably die any year, won't it?
It will die when it dies. And I'm not one of these people to say, if I die, he dies, all right. It's a fish to me. It is still just a carp.
When we spoke yesterday, you said something really interesting about, and I like to think it gets to the heart of how you're trying to fish for a target carp. And that's this idea of getting it to put its mouth over a small bit of lake bed, because it's a big lake. Mm-hmm. Is it 70 acres bigger? Is it?
Yeah, it's hard to say because it's so in and out, but you've got a big sheet of, so just quickly to describe it, you've got 5 or 6 acres of islands and out of bounds. You've then got 30 plus acres of open water with sort of your generic Lea Valley sort of platform swims.
Yeah.
With some islands dotted in there, deep water, 20 foots and big bars and stuff. And then you've got sort of top end, you've got another 5 acres of another lake mm-hmm. with big reed pools and bays. Then there's a sort of back bay, there's a pipe that connects that to 12 acres of finger bays, like lots of finger bays. So it's logistically crazy, Yeah.
But and you have got to try and get that fish to touch down.
Yeah.
In a way, it seems like you're sort of very realistic about how distant that prospect could seem.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I can be quite sort of, I definitely have times where I feel like something's going to happen, and it does. But the reality is that, at the minute for me, I'm training a carp to put its mouth on a certain part of the lake. So so I've got more of a chance. I don't think I'm catching. There's so many good anglers who have gone and caught everything but that one, and I'm not going to name them, but they are, they're the best out there. One of which, I named Luke Valerie. He fished it for, I don't know, 5-6 seasons, caught everything, probably caught everything twice. He's come back and caught it. Don't get me wrong, he was running around, but there's a lot of luck involved in it. He even said that he weren't amazing capture, and he battered it, and he does. That's what he does. But, for me, I need to train it to do what I want it to do.
This is what I'm getting. This is where I think we're going with this. Is this idea that now your life is a bit different? We are going to talk about some of the stuff you did pre-family.
Yeah.
But now your life is a bit different. You're trying to achieve almost like a magic trick.
Yeah.
Limited time, baiting missions, and trying to tie this fish to an area.
Yeah. So 4 buckets, 4 buckets a week minimum.
Okay.
Like bait up. So I go and do 4 buckets in one go.
And okay, so this is all done in the dead of night.
In the dead of night, yeah. Not to hide it or anything.
No.
I've got people fishing on my spot, probably as we speak. It's happened, there's nothing you can do about it. It's busy Park Lake. But, I feel like the way that I'm fishing for it, fishing that Frogmore style that me and Brad, no one taught us it. It was an accident.
How would you summarise the style?
We were drilling leads into the islands because we didn't know how to feel for a drop. And half the rigs were probably tangled, but we'd catch loads and loads. I remember my absolute maximum was probably 70 yards.
Yeah.
But every now and then the wind would give you an extra 1.5 yards. So I fished with no clips or anything. There was an island that was 70 yards and I would just go whack. And every now and then, bang, it would, the hook bait would clip the trees and you're right, that's a bite. And if you could do that with 2 rods, you're having 2 straight away. And people used to come up to us and say, I don't know how you're having 5 or 6 in a day.
Yeah.
And we were getting dropped off at 9 or whatever and picked up at probably 4 o'clock. So now I'm fishing to an island and I'm not doing that because I don't want to fish tangled rigs, but I'm fishing in a manner that enables me to have them rigs, and I've tested it with marker floats and stuff, so I know where that, you've got to put everything in your favour. And for me, a night a week, and don't get me wrong, I'm doing with work and stuff, I'm generally doing a day, a night, and a day. So I need something set up, and that something has got to, because I can't look around. I'm on a laptop or that's just the way of the work. The way of my job is that I get content throughout the day. In an ideal world, I'd probably live in the jungle somewhere. But in a semi-ideal world, I'd be doing all my own fishing. But this is the best I've ever had it, and I mean the best I've ever had it with work and stuff. Great opportunity. I'm working for Jag currently, but I do a day, a night, and a day. So I get there, I get the rigs out, I sit there for a day, and generally, because I'm getting there at 1:30, and I'm making sure them rigs are out perfect. I've had all my bites have been on the first day. I've only had 1 bite the second day because I'm packing up early for work. I worked out the bite time where I'm fishing is 9:30 in the morning, and I'm reeling in at 6:30. So, but I'm trying to get 2 bite times. I'm trying to maximise it. So rather than getting there for 5, 6, 7, 8 in the morning, I get there at 1:30, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And it gets earlier and earlier every week to the point where my missus gets home from work and I go, ding, right, I'm going, see you later. I go to bed with her just to make her feel a bit better about it, but I might pretend to be asleep or whatever. I know it sounds strange, but you've got to do what you got to do. I don't think she knows that, but she knows now.
Yeah.
She knows I've done that kind of thing before. When I fish smaller waters and stuff, but this is a different challenge. And it is training. It's 4 buckets when I'm fishing. I'm not always putting loads of bait out, but if I can put a bit out before I leave, I will. But generally, I'm trying to extend that bite time. So, but also I've got a map of and I find out everything I can about Moonscale, and I've looked at where it's been caught from over the years, and it's a creature of habit to some extent.
Yeah.
It does a random one, as they all do, and it's a very strange carp, and it doesn't get caught very often. I'm talking once every 18 months, 2 years, 3 years sometimes, but I feel like I'm putting all the odds in my favour that I can, and I'm thinking of it differently to everyone else. Therefore, it probably will come out last week, but I still feel like I can catch that one. Yeah, at this side of 2024.
How has the baiting side evolved for you? I'm interested in what you're baiting it with when you do your big hits, and how does that change when you actually come to fish?
So I'm baiting with large. It's whatever the sack in the garden's got in it. I'll cook it up.
It's
but
a particle, yeah.
Generally, it's pigeon conditioner, maize. I think they love maize. I remember fishing over on the Ebro and maize outfished boilies. So, they clearly love it. But I've just anything that is a pain in the arse for the crayfish, little bits and bobs. I might blend up a load of tigers as well, put some tigers in there. like some big ones in there as well. Because crays can just grab one thing and walk in their hole, but they can also just sit there. Like if you put crumb out there, they can just sit there eating.
Really?
I think it's difficult for them to eat. Yeah, but I like to fish in boilies when I am fishing. I prefer to fish a pop up because I think a pop up's going to nail them straight away, whereas a bottom bait rig has got, or a wafter has got to be picked up to put the hook where you need it to go to get in the bottom lip.
Yeah.
They're all these, but it's a big carp. I've seen the way it swims. It scrapes its arse on the bottom and its head's up, so it should tilt and all that. But yeah, the seed is purely to keep bait there, but it's a big old carp, and I do like to have boilie in there as well. I like to have something that you really want, something softer. Maybe if it's got, I don't know, it might have no teeth. Who knows? You don't know, do you? So I'm really thinking about everything. How long that bait's out there for. That's why it's got to be 4 buckets. If I had 2 nights a week or whatever, I might not do what I'm doing. And in the autumn, I might switch it up. I've got a bit of a plan in my head already, but while I feel like, every week I'm like one last roll of the dice, and every time I do it, I'm buzzing. But last week I was like, I think this is the last time I'm going to do it, but it's not. I'm going to do it again. But
yeah, because we'll probably get a warm September.
Yeah, exactly.
As seems to happen.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not the autumn yet. I mean, there's a bite in the air, but it ain't the autumn yet. So yeah, I hope that cleared something up.
No, absolutely. No, I'm just fascinated because obviously it strikes me that you don't tend to. It seems like you don't switch off from thinking. Certainly, this fish has got you thinking a lot.
I'm like that anyway. But yeah.
What is that in terms of whatever it happens to be that you're focusing on, be that your art or your work?
Sometimes it can be all of them. I mean, at the minute it is work. It's
how
art.
do you make the space in your head for those 3 things, if you like?
It's like one, they're like 2 Spartans fighting each other, and one's winning at one point of the day and one's winning at the other. I know when I'm at work, I've got to be switched on to work. I'm very motivated to do the job, but but I'm also very motivated to go to fish, and it is hard, don't get me wrong, but the way my mind works is the main way my mind works, and sometimes certain things do take over. I've had it where work's completely taken over, and when I started the job I had to do it. I had to lay foundations, and I had a plan in my head, and I wanted to show that these plans they're going to work, sort of thing, because they're but at the same time every carp angler like me knows that it's in the blood, and you've got to some extent you've got to do what you got to do, because if you're not doing it, you're not happy, and if you're not happy, and it's an addiction, so I feel like probably a bit of therapy about carp fishing is probably better than doing it, but I'm going to continue to do it. So I think that in order for me to be happy, this is why I get up at 1:30 in the morning, because it doesn't affect work or family. Yeah, I'm tired, but you know what, nothing that the free coffee machine at work don't sort out.
So you get up at 1:30. You're at the lake for 2:30.
Yep.
Are you putting the bait straight out?
Yeah.
Does that then take some time, right?
It takes a lot of time, yeah. I started doing that over the lake I was fishing before in the Lea Valley. That's where I sort of started that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done it on smaller lakes, but this is, often via spom, you know what I mean? It takes a long time, or however you put your bait in it takes a long time.
4 buckets has got to be hours. 2 or 3 hours, yeah?
More than that, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, a long time. Hell of a long time. So
actually it's dawn by the time you're leaving the lake.
Yeah, and sometimes you do it because you want to do it in the dark, and other times you do it because you have to do it in the dark. So it's there's different reasons. There's a lot of strategy behind my fishing, and that is why you need that relationship with the lake, because if you don't have that, if you don't sit there sometimes and go, I could be running around like a nutter, which I do in the spring. I could be running around, but I'm going to sit here, and I'm not going to have that cup of tea in the morning, so I am a little bit like stiller and a little bit less wired, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try and work this shit out. And when I get home, I'm going to work out. I've always, when I'm driving home, there's a plan in my head of what I'm going to do when I get home, and I've got to put that cross on that map, and I've got to work. I've got little dotted lines of patrol routes and stuff, and it could be a load of bollocks, but in my eyes, that makes me happy enough to feel like I'm one step ahead of them. And if you can mentally get ahead of them, or mentally get where you need to be, then definitely you're catching them. Even if I've had it before where I've caught something doing totally different to my plan, but the plan got me in the headspace I needed to be to catch that fish.
Okay. I think it's really important that we talk before. I want to talk next about your journey, because I think it's really important to establish how work has changed, why it's changed, and how that's affected your fishing. But then I want to talk about, give us an example of where this baiting had worked, which to me is that perhaps the Lea Pit would be a good example.
Yeah.
So I just, it fascinates me that you've got so much going on in your head now, and yet you were barbering for how long were you sort of in there?
I mean, I was doing it professionally for 10 years, but I was cutting friends' hair at school and making money from it for 12. So
like 12 years, which I imagine you cutting someone's hair, you can be away and thinking about other things, or maybe you've got to be really focused so you don't chop the top of their ear off. I don't know.
It got to a point where, you know, I was a really good barber, and I was managing a shop by 21 years old and earning better money than I am now with no kids and all that. But I weren't as keen in the fishing then. I mean, I was keen, but I was, you know,
you had some time away, right? As well.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. You know, I had 4 years off, and I got back into it when I was 21. The barbering thing, what was it you said?
Just in terms of how your headspace has changed, because it strikes me there's probably time to think about your fishing when you're doing that.
I had 10 years of people coming in the shop, regular customers, going, "Oh, what, you go fishing, do you?" Because I chewed their ear off so bad about it that I was known as the bloke who just spoke about carp all day.
Oh, really?
And the
least receptive audience going as well.
Mate, you know what? I think I'm, you know, I had enough charisma because I was very aware of the fact that I sort of had to flirt with these blokes to some extent in order to have lifelong customers. You know, you've got to do what you've got to do, and you know, I wanted them to be comfortable and this and that and whatever else. And I've got friends good friends out of it to it as well.
I was going to say, did you ever meet another carp angler in that process?
Loads, shitloads. Yeah, in fact, like you'd mention it in the hope that someone was a carp angler, because you'd think, oh mate, I had 650 return customers. So, as in people who just wanted to book with me, I was so busy that I was busier then. That I had less time then than I do now without children, and that's the truth. But you know, I was enjoying it them first sort of few years, but I certainly enjoyed having a carp angler in and talking all things carp and learning about different parts of the world and all that kind of thing.
Do you think that the barbering was a creative outlet? Because we're going to talk a bit about creativity in this podcast, because it's something we mentioned on the phone. I was talking to Elliot about it this morning. Do you think creativity is something that everybody's got, or is creativity something that only certain people have got and is revealed at different times in their lives?
I mean, creativity is subjective. I mean, some people will say they're not creative. I might be well wrong in this, but you know, Danny might say he's not creative, but he's built this, so he's created that. You know, women create children. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think we're all creative in our own way. But just because you're quite rigid in your creations doesn't mean you're less creative than someone who's a bit of an airhead like me. You know, but cutting hair wasn't creative enough. It wasn't stimulating enough for me. In fact, like, you know, I am quite philosophical, and I do get very deep into stuff, and I always have. So there's got to be something that I can really get stuck into, but also I've got to have other outlets that I can go even deeper into, and that's not carp fishing. You know, like could be the painting or whatever. But you know, it wasn't stimulating enough for me to do 14-hour days, which I was doing at the time. But to start with, it was a learning process. I met a lot of people, and I learned a lot about myself, and I think that was the most important thing. It was, you know, boy to man in them sort of 10, 12 years.
You know, I don't know you very well, Jake, but you do seem to be incredibly someone who's very conscious of where you are, very self-aware, you know, of your shortcomings and your sort of
you know, I mean, it depends on when you meet me. Like, you know, I could have a period where I do get a bit lost, but that's when you have that good misses or whatever, you know. And I don't drink very often, probably a couple of times a year. I might have a Cobra with a curry or an Estrella with a barbecue or whatever. But you know, in terms of having more than 2 beers, it's, you know, and even them, they're probably once every 6 or 8 weeks. In terms of having a couple of beers, it's like, in terms of my head going, if you like, it's. When I'm there and you spoke to me, you think, fuck me, is he all right? But that is just a part of the process. It's like an upgrade sort of thing, you know. So, you know, generally I'm very aware of whatever, but when I do get to that point where I'm like ultimate level 100 scatty and totally unaware and totally in my emotions. I do have light bulb moments, and it's probably led by my missus, where I go, and I had one not too long ago where I go, right, time for change, and that change is always very positive.
Honestly, the degree of self-awareness to understand that change is necessary is something in itself, because I think a lot of people, and I probably throw myself just about into this crowd, can go a long time without actually getting to that tipping point.
I think I had many years of being very unaware of who and what I was, and I've got a long way to go. If I'm at, you know, if I'm let's say there's a level 100, I'm still only at level 20 or whatever,
Okay.
you know, or whatever, you know.
Could be a life's work.
It is a life's work, and that's what my life's all about. You know, the fishing, it is just, I mean, I'm obsessed with it, but really it is purely, it's fun. Do you know what I mean? It is, and that's what it's supposed to be. And the job has got to be as fun as I can make it. And time with my missus has got to be good, and I've got to have the right girl. I've been with her for, you know, this is our 10th year, and, you know, the kids, I've got to try my best to have the best time with them all. So it is a massive balance. It's a funny balance, like, because none of it's really balanced. You know, I've always said I burn the candle at every end you can and more. You know, I get the lighter and put it in the middle of the candle, but you know, I'm able to do it still, so I'll continue to do so. You know?
So how did that, when that tipping point came, I think you were quite open about the fact that you wanted to move out of that world and into this one, if you like.
Yeah, so I was very open. You know, I hear it a lot that people sound sometimes, and this is no disrespect, but quite highly strung, and I understand why they do. And once upon a time, I would have probably said the same. But
what do you think that means?
In terms of being highly strung,
yeah.
You're too aware of what people think about your decision making.
Okay.
So for example, I'm not doing this to get any recognition in whatever field I'm doing, but you are. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And I was, you know, I fished for a job in the fishing industry, without a doubt. That is exactly what I did, and I used the Instagram as a tool to do that. You know, I had a period of being lost, and at the end of that period, I had a light bulb moment, and that was that. I went for it, and I didn't know what I was looking for.
Kind of found you, I suppose.
Yeah, to some degree.
Because you put yourself out there. Yeah.
And you've got to be as open as you can. Some days I am, and some days I'm not. You know, I try and smile at people when I'm walking the dog, because that can create an opportunity. Even if I want to give them the devil eyes, you know, because that closes doors. You know, and that's something that I learned like a long time ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. So,
God, I feel bad for walking around with a scowl on my face now.
We all do it. You know, I'm not aware of myself 100% of the time. In fact, probably do it far more than than it sounds like I do.
Did you find when you sort of started working in fishing that it ticked the boxes you were hoping it might?
In some ways, yes. I mean, I'm going fishing more than I ever do. I'm doing a night a week at the minute, and a whole day as well. And I've got access to cheap/free bait, and I've got access to sort of cheaper tackle, and you know, there are certain perks that you get. You know, I
what about from a fulfillment standpoint?
Fulfillment,
because presumably that's what you were searching for initially.
Yeah. I'm far more fulfilled in work. You know, I work for Jag. I do their media. Or do our media, you know, and it's added Jag itself has added so many more dimensions for me to think about in my own fishing, which is great. And I know that that's going to come to fruition in terms of results and different ways of catching them, which is interesting to me. And the job, I'm highly stimulated by it. You know, I'm often at level 300%, you know, and you get 60% or 300% with me. And if I'm at 60%, I think, well, I'm sort of at the same level as most people anyway. So, you know, if you get 300%, you're doing all right. Yeah. And I think they get 300% out of me quite a lot, and I get the same back. You know. What's it like working with Jim, who the boss at Jag, who is obviously an exceptional carp angler in his own right? He'd hate for me to say it, but you know, he should be the one to say it here, because it's
not really his thing though, is it?
It's not. But you know, I can't even talk about his captures, but he's caught more in this year than I've in my whole life. You know, and he does a couple of nights a week.
Do you talk about fishing with Jim?
Like, yeah. I really enjoy a fishing chat with Jim. I really enjoy a fishing chat with my nan or the dog. So, you know, Well, Jim has got a completely different perspective to me. So he's got an engineer's perspective, I would say, but then he's also got his own unique perspective. He's built what he's built, and it's great to not only be a part of it, but just to see it. But he's you look at what he's built, and when you ever talk, you could see it when you talk to him about fishing, and he's got a different perspective. Why don't you do this? Or why don't you try that? Or you know, he wouldn't say you're doing it all wrong, but like he'll give you loads of light bulb moments that might take you months to get to yourself, but he'd get you there. He'd fast track you because he thinks of it in a completely different way. And you know, I do think a lot about rigs and stuff to some. I mean, I'm not chopping and changing ever, but I do think a lot about my rigs, and I know that I've showed him things that he's gone, bloody hell, that's really interesting. But he's so precise in. He said something to me like, we were talking about hook sharpening, and he goes, and he's not arrogant at all, but he said, if there's anyone who knows anything about cutting metal, it's Jag, right?
Yeah.
So no one can talk to him about hook sharpening, and that is the truth. And I've seen it, and there's other things as well, you know, so that no one can talk to Jim about. But you know, yeah, he's a machine, no doubt. And the travelling light thing, I mean, I get my mates take the piss out of me on Instagram and stuff, but you know, it might sound like a gimmick or like I'm trying to sell you something, and it is my job to sell you something, but genuinely I wouldn't put my name on stuff that I don't believe for a start. And that I thought I was travelling light all these years, and I'm going around the Met, and the lake was talking about earlier, and I'm knackered, and I'm stopping 6 times around the lake because it's, you know, so I mean, a lap from the car park, or there's no car parks, but from the housing estate or the whatever, you're going over railway bridges, then you're doing a lap, you're going in and out, left, right, and I'm stopping 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Jim just looked at my gear and went that, switched a few bits over, and all of a sudden I don't stop anymore. In fact, like, there's so little gear, but I'm not taking, there's nothing I'm not taking, that it's easier for me to pack up and quicker and all that shit. You know, it sounds like a gimmick, but when you do it, you're like, bloody hell. So it's added that dimension to my fishing. I don't think it was like, you know, I would have been all right without it, but you know, mate, any little, you know, they say about the percent, it's true, isn't it? You know, and this is not a 1%, this is a 10%.
Do you think? Yeah.
Without a doubt, yeah. You know, like the baiting is a 20% or whatever, or, you know, that if you are on your toes, especially in the spring, the getting up at first, like all that stuff, I don't do it. But, you know, that's a real big part of.
You don't do it because actually the bit of sort of tiredness, lack of sleep, the bit where you're putting yourself out is in the night, not in the morning.
Yeah,
you've done the work by then.
I've done the work, but also I don't want to get up watching and then go to work and be shit at work.
Yes, fair.
And also I'm watching for the next week. Watching for the next week's rubbish. It's not fun doing that. You know, don't get me wrong, I'll get there early to watch if I'm not baiting, like in the spring, and you're sort of doing the same thing. But I've got more of a buzz about going to bait up than I do about going to watch.
Because like what you said, the actually it could be all different by next week, whereas your bait spot is going to be built rather than diminishing.
Them,
yeah,
you know, you're training them.
Yeah.
You're not going, mate. I love fishing choddies and spreads. Like when we fish Frogmore, like I see Bailey do it, and he might have even showed me, but it just changed everything for me. I was fishing then over in the Mare's Tail and fishing for what I saw, and I love fishing for what I see. I love it, but more stalking there and then, not getting up at first light with a cup of tea, watching. It's probably not laziness, but it's probably just I need that extra hour.
I know. I kind of, you know, if you've got that one night a week and you've got to turn in for work, there has to be a balance, doesn't there?
Yeah.
And you're striking that balance by putting the effort in elsewhere. But let's talk about an example of where you've used this method, or perhaps where you even forged this method. And I think we're going to talk Lea Pit.
So the Lea Pit followed on to somewhere else where I was doing it more long range, but the Lea Pit was the lake that I started fishing there in October the October of 2019.
Tell us a little bit about the place, because I know nothing about it really. So.
It's a small lake. I don't know, 4 acres, something like that. I always say 4 acres and I go down there and I think, geez, this looks tiny. But I'm going to say 4 acres.
This is it here, yeah?
This is the one, yeah. So it's a small lake. It's I started very much edge spots. I'll have a look at it. I started very much edge spots, like that swim there. I pre-baited that heavily and just got crayed to the max, right? Tips right back, left, right, you know, watching the spots clear up, probably the crays and all that sort of thing, and where I could see. And I I saw a show in that swim in the late October. I'd done 4 nights, 3 in there, but lots of baiting up, sometimes daily. It was 40 minutes from my home. And because we were getting to a certain time of year, I was baiting up with maybe like a small bucket or whatever. I think now, if in hindsight, I did it a couple of autumns later on there. I could have gone big. But I saw one show opposite in a big set of snags, and then realised that set of snags was very significant. Mm-hmm. And on a small lake, like all the lakes we grew up fishing, a big set of snags, generally, one that just to you goes, that is significant. And there was 3 sets on the Lea Pit, so you had between swim 4 and 5, significant set of snags. Between 9 and 10, a real significant set of snags, and then between 1 and 14 there was like a out of bounds bank, and that was a very significant set of snags as well. So you had 3 real big sets. Started in 4 after seeing that show, and I was going down there daily. By then we were into November before I'd fished it, so mid-November was my first night, and I was going down there daily, and I was putting in like a half a small bucket of casters, maggots, crushed tigers, boilie, bit of hemp, whatever really. And on my first night, nothing, but I saw this big scaly mirror swim out of the bush to my right. I thought, fuck me, that's a nice fish, really nice fish. And I wasn't totally aware of the stock, because I know that all the old ones had died. There was the big common in there, which was really what I had my eyes on. But it wasn't the lake that it was when Tom Lorraine fished it. It had, or even previously, it had a 50 pounder in it, and the big common in there, another big common that was the same sort of size, and all sorts. Now they'd all died. There was an old two-tone that had died, and a quarterlin had died, and I was fishing for what's left, which I quite like because it's generally quite quiet, especially in the winter. I didn't have it to myself, but I had it to myself enough where I could generally get in the swim. And I'd go down there in the dark, and I would shove. I even did it where I'd go down there at 1 and 2 in the morning, sometimes shove a rod in there and then leave before work. And I'd shove this rod right in these snags, because by then I just had the hunch that you needed to be in the snags, not outside the snags, because they get fished for all the time outside the snags. And obviously I was doing it very safely. The first time I did it, I had a little bit of a drop in the bobbin. I was fishing 60-pound leaders, braid, you couldn't have done it any safer. But the first time I did it, nothing all day. My mate had come down, and I thought I'll make him a cup of tea when he comes down. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's getting dark, or starting to get dark. And I thought, I'll put my pre-bait in now, but I'll kick the rods out because it looks cool. That was the only reason I get the rods out. Anyway, put out like 1.5 kilo, 2 kilo bait, made him a cup of tea, and then the rods just hooped round. And I had these 13-foot Slim Jims, 25-year-old rods, hooped round to absolute maximum. The bend in the rod was enough for it to get in the snag. And, well, sort of. It was like 7 lunges, and then it was in the snag. And then I remember saying to him, do you think it was a bird? Because I was so elevated. And I'd done that over Frogmore when I caught the big common. I was convinced it was a tench the whole time, because it was almost like an out of this world experience, I wasn't thinking straight. Anyway, he was like, that's a fucking carp. Anyway, we'd done a lap, gone home, come back the next week, obviously put my bait in, like a lot, throughout the week, 5 times that week or whatever. And because I was self-employed barber at the time, driving around to people's houses, what I was doing, I could do that. I'd go, right, I'll start early, or I'll bait early, bait late, whatever. And I had my little one was 1.5, 2 by this point, my first little one. So anyway, I'd gone down the next week, in the dark, head torch, rod right in the snag, could see the bit of foam come up right where I wanted it. Big old, I can't remember, it was an 8-ounce lead probably, and bowstring tight this time. But I'd also shoved I had a storm pole in, but I'd shoved like bank stick on the reel handle, so nothing's being pulled at all. And I faced the rod towards the spot. Right, I thought, I ain't fucking losing this one. And I picked it up, I dragged it in and then let it fight a little bit in the open water. But the Lea Pit, like all the Lea Valley waters, it's not very well maintained to some extent, in a good way. I mean, there's probably 5 swims you can fish out of the 14 now. And yeah, I'd got it in, it was a really nice one. And then the week after, it was just rinse and repeat then. The week after, I'd caught the one that I saw swimming out the bush, which was this, it was, scales were the size of my hand sort of thing. It was a fish that was tethered. Now I didn't explain that you got deep margins, shallow in the middle, lots of snags, and you got lots of anglers on, lots and lots of anglers from a consortium. So you've got 4,000 or 5,000 members who can fish it, loads of different clubs. And I'd accessed it through a ticket that was 50 odd quid. But yeah, basically this fish here, if you click on that side, its mouth has worn away.
Is it this one here?
Yeah. So that was a 36 pounder originally. I didn't know this at the time, but it had actually been caught. You can see the argulus on the lifted scale there. So I didn't lift that scale. It happens, but I didn't do it.
Tiny withered tail as well.
Oh mate, the tail was like Batman's head, you know, and the scales were, I mean, there's almost like a smiley face there, that sort of thing. But it was impressive, like so impressive. I remember I sent a video to my mate that I put on the Sipography video that was like, I was talking in a stupid accent, and I'd said, I'd sent him this video, and he said, is that a Simo? And I was like, you're joking. It was in the dead of night. It looked really pale. But I think I caught it at 2 a.m. And I just sat up all night with it. I was so happy. And then this was at probably, I don't know, half hour after first light or something. But I knew it to be like a 36 pounder. I'd had it at 30 pound odd. But it turns out it had been tethered because there's so many anglers can fish it. And I'm not being rude, but they just don't fish it right. You know, this one I actually gone back. I went back the week after and retrieved a tackle with a storm pole. Went over the snag and got it all back, and I still had my maggots on the
one you'd lost. Yeah,
the one I'd lost. So, but this is my 3rd bite by now in 3 weeks, and yeah, I mean it was the start of bloody good times, you know. But I think the week after that I'd had another one, but I'd actually gone down there at 2 a.m. or something stupid. I slept on a nooking mat and it was frosty that night, but I caught one, and then I was in the cafe.
You put your rods out at 2 in the morning?
Well, I was only really fishing one rod. I'd sometimes put the other rod out, but it was like, there was no point of having the rod out. In the end, a lot of that lake was one rod. In fact, 90% of it was one rod, and the other 10% was you should have just fished one rod. But yeah, 2 a.m, 6 o'clock I had the bite, and I had like a really nice black one, which should probably be on there somewhere if you want to see it.
Absolutely.
But sort of one of the stockies, if you like. I mean, that one's actually died now. I think it just never recovered from the tethered, you know, the tethering. It died 2 years after I caught it. So keep going down, up, all the way to the top. Sorry, there's no order here. Down, 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 down. That one. Right, so it was a nice one, you know, 23 pound I think it was.
Yeah, lovely carp, mate.
Yeah, but you know,
black.
That was yeah. I mean, I didn't know of that fish. In fact, most of them I didn't know of, not because they're unknown or anything, but just because I didn't know the place very well.
I suppose with those club waters, though, it's so much like ships of the night. No one ever talks to each other. Like
the serious anglers are very coy, and then the others
might do a trip and then never come back. So.
Yeah, a lot of big turnarounds. So you never had a threat from people fishing your bait. Well, they could, but they wouldn't be back the week after.
So is this where you started baiting in the night? Had you established that as a?
I mean, I had done, a lot of baiting in the night. Yeah.
By necessity or by choice?
Yeah, I didn't want. I mean, the second stint on the Lea Pit. So I'd done that winter, and then the lockdown happened. But yeah, I was fishing in the night. In fact, I'd done something really, really bad once. But there was two blokes fishing down there, and they were nice enough. They kept losing them in the snags, right? And one of them actually cut his line during he was attached to a swan. And I was like, mate, you can't be doing that, you know. It's so bad. And this is the kind of thing you were dealing with on there, unfortunately. And I just remember thinking, I don't want him hooking these fish. So I went down there one night. He said they were doing the night, and I went home and come back. They said they were doing another night. I went home and come back. They said we're going to work the next day. So I've gone down there that day, and this is probably where it all started in the night. And he said, "No, we're going to stay for another night. We've sacked the work off. They've done a bit of, they just Lee Valley bandits, you know." And I went, fuck it then. I'll come back at midnight, and I climbed on the snag where no doubt he was fishing to, and I threw all my bait over it. It's the first and last time I've ever done that. But I remember at the time being pissed off with this really nice bloke because he was hooking them and losing them and causing things like that. And, you know, it's not like in a malicious way for him and not in a malicious way for me, but these are our carp and we've got to look after them. And when you're seeing holes in amazing fish and they've probably died prematurely, I don't think that scaly one was a mega old one. It was probably, you know, approaching 20 years old. I've tried to work it out, and I think it probably was 18, 19 years old. But we wanted to live to 40 or 50, and they're not going to if they're tethered. They're just not. It never got back to £36. It was £24 for a long time. Then I didn't know this until after, and then it died of a heart attack in someone's net, I think it was. So, I don't think that would have happened if, the reason these leanies were living a long time was because they were unharassed for a large period of their life. And, but that's another story. But after that, a lot of the baiting was in the night, and I was baiting that spot regularly now. So I'd moved, by this point, I'd moved round to, I didn't put the photos on there, but I'd moved round to number 9 to fish between 9 and 10, that next significant set of snags.
Why had you moved?
I felt like I weren't going to catch the common from this set, and it was more of a hunch than anything. I just felt I ain't catching the common there. And I'd gone round to this other set, and it just looked, in fact, it was where Tom and Lorraine had caught the original big common. And that had no bearing as to why I was there, because it was a different fish. But clearly, significant set of snags. There was a spot there, one rod, and I started doing the same thing. I was actually baiting with a ridiculously small amount of bait, like 2 palms full of crumb.
Really?
It was really cold. Yeah, on my first night, it all started actually. I got back from Tenerife for my little one's second birthday, and I thought, right, I'm gonna go bait up, and I just thought, no, I'm gonna go bait that swim up. It just, I don't know whether I had it. It's a long time ago in my head while I was out there or what, but I'd gone down there. Put the bait. No, I'd gone down there. Sorry, I'd just fished that swim on the hunch, and I lost one that night. It's the first time I ever used a roddy rig, and I didn't use it for a long time after that. Anyway, I lost one, and then that started the night baiting after that, and it was I think a month. So it was in January. A month later, in mid-Feb, I'd caught the dark fish, which they've called a different name nowadays. So if you go right down to the bottom. It's one of my favourite carp of all time. It's not a monster. I mean, now it's a 40-pounder, I think. But so if you go that one there, that's it, yeah. And the other side, I remember in the flesh, it just reminded me of like a car park fish. Now it didn't. The photos,
I could see that the head's very dustbiny.
The shoulders, this is exactly it. I mean, it doesn't look anything like dustbin, but in my head,
it does, mate.
It did at the time, and I remember with that one. It really got me buzzing to just sit in that swim for the rest of the winter.
I mean, we've sort of. I don't want to diminish the fact that you're catching these fish in the winter, mate. We haven't even really discussed the fact it's winter.
Yeah.
Had you changed the what you're putting in and how much you're putting in when on the bait ups during this period?
So I put in a quarter of a key. I took a photo of what I was baiting. I was putting in like a palm full of pigeon conditioner. I weren't really getting birded.
On the when you're fishing, is this?
So I was So when but also when I was baiting up, I bait up with a bit more. So when I was fishing, so I'd walk out to the end of this snag, and you're like balancing, and you've got 10, 12 foot there. In fact, you've got 16 foot there
in January,
and then you've got like a hump that you can actually see if the light was right, and it was 4 to 5 on there. But there was a certain drop I'd get, and I can't put my finger on it, but it would be like a shadow would go through your body and you go, that's the one. And it'd take me 25 casts sometimes, because even though, it was almost like you'd reel in sometimes and you go, fuck, that is the right dent on the lead. That's the spot. But I just had to get the feeling like that. We used to get it down the island pit over Frogmore. Ding! Oh, that's the one.
Yeah. And
if I didn't get that's the one, I'd redo it. And I don't think that would screw the chances up. Whether it did or didn't, who knows? But it worked. And I was putting out a lot of maggots, crumb, sort of crushed tigers. I remember wanting them to hear each other feeding on there. Small lake, and vibration is everything everywhere, but I mean, when you hear a phone vibrate, everyone just like a bunch of robots. So a carp knows when something's eating 30 or 40 yards away from it. It knows the sound. We are so out of tune with our environment, and they are so in tune with their environment. I don't think they're book smart like some people think, but they're so in tune. And that's why I think sometimes like scaling down to a size 6 or something, it sounds stupid to a lot of people nowadays. That could work, and especially with that one. That mouth was tiny. I wouldn't have got a 20mm boilie in there. But I think maggots was a big thing. If I didn't bring maggots, I wouldn't catch.
Really, I mean, that winters have gone like that, haven't they? For a lot of people, I think.
Yeah,
maggots, crumb, corn.
100%. I mean, corn I put in there, sometimes like real small coarse pellets. But it was more the amounts than what I was putting in. Well, to an extent. I mean, it was certainly like, if it was boilie, it was crumbed up. But when I was fishing, it was like palm full of pigeon conditioner. I remember just wanting to have all these different things in there. I've sometimes I like boilie fishing, but I wanted it. I didn't quite know. I think it was the maggots, but I didn't quite know exactly what it was that was making them go, yeah, I want that. And I wanted to have all the things in there. And we were rolling our own bait at the time. So, because I was a self-employed barber and I was so down with work by this point, I've been doing it a long time. I'd slacked with the work, and to my own detriment with money and everything. I'm more of a man now, so I wouldn't do that. But I'm also aware that if you ever get like that, you change. It took me a long time to change. I was in this mindset where I didn't know what to change to or how to change, I didn't post on Instagram or anything at the time, so that wasn't even a thought about. But we were rolling our bait, me and a friend Lewis. We had a big setup. We put quite a bit of money into it around his house, rollers and stuff. So I would go and do a day's rolling with him, and it was good fun. And we had a really good bait that he'd sort of originally come up with, and we'd tweak together. I remember putting it in and carp going mad for it and changing certain bits and whatever else, and rolling 10,000 pop-up recipes to get them right and all sorts. But that bait, I felt like, could have had something to do with it. It could have been the maggot was definitely the maggot was the most important thing, but I just wanted to be sure that it wasn't something else. And I don't overthink too much in that sense, but in the winter you just want all the odds, and that was really important. I mean, I was catching it at -2 and stuff like that, so in January.
Do you think that the fish that you're pre-baiting, because it sounds like you were very, very light touch with the pre-bait on this occasion in the winter, do you think it was because they lived in the snag that they were there? So what the baiting wasn't as important? And
the baiting was to train them to put their mouth there.
Right.
It wasn't to get them there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you've got to get them there, other times you've got to get their mouth there. Mm-hmm. And that was one of them scenarios. I proved that I knew they were there because I caught one straight away, and I was baiting regularly enough where I didn't have to put a lot out, because I'd go there daily when I was really on it. And sometimes I'd go and spend my last 30 quid on a gallon of maggots, and it would be like, well, we've got enough food in the fridge. I was earning money daily. I was a barber, I knew on a Friday I'd probably get 200 or 300 quid's worth of work. It's not a very mature way of going about things, but sometimes I live in the wind, and that was obviously one of them scenarios. And also I hated the work and I loved the fishing. So
straight down the shop, spending your money on maggot.
Sometimes I wouldn't even bring any food, because it's like, well, I'm getting here in the dark, leaving in the morning, cup of tea, pint of milk. So that's one of them lakes that I created that relationship with. It weren't about casting to showers and all that rubbish. It was I call that rubbish, but obviously it's really good, isn't it? But
I know what you meant. Yeah,
that was that was one of them scenarios, and the lockdown happened. I'd had quite a few by then. I think I'd had 10 bites, 9 fish. No, 11 bites, 9 fish by then. But nothing significant. I'd had quite a few of these sort of smaller fish. I think there was 25, 30 fish, something like that in there. I never really knew. But I'd had that dark one, and that was like the one to have. I'd had the scaly one, that was the one to have. And then I'd gone, the scaly one had died. The dark one had got a lot bigger, but I weren't bothered by it. Lockdown happened. I fished loads of other waters. Come back. In a few other waters, come back in the autumn of 21, so we're a year and a half, something like that. And it was at one of these periods where I was really busy again with moving house and all sorts of stuff, and we were rolling bait, and that was taking up time and not earning any money. It was for the love, it weren't for anything else.
Okay.
And I remember having the flu and stuff, and I was feeling really ropey, but I'd got into this mindset again of, I knew we were moving back. We were moving to our house from our mum's, where we lived for a short period. We moved from a flat to our mum's for 6 to 8 weeks. And I knew we were moving into this house. So I would drive down the lake, and I'd start bait up. I'd drive around the lake and I see them. And that was the trigger. I see them in the 14 snags. This was September. So I'd had a summer of almost no fishing as well. Just had to knuckle down and get on with certain things. I actually had to earn a load of money to pay for certain things for the house. Mm-hmm. And which was hard work. I was real down, at the time. But no, down's the wrong word. But I was exhausted. But this spark had got me through it, and I saw the whole stock, including the common, in this 14 snags. And I knew that no one could fish it. No one was fishing this spot. It was like, ding, you're going to put a rig in there by putting your baiting pole through the out of bounds, casting over it in the dark. It was all done in the dark because they ban you if you did it in the light. Or at least years ago, the stigma with this place was they would ban you for that kind of thing. Mates had said, oh, you'll be all right. But it's like, well, technically, while I'm around this sort of the rig, I'm off me rod. So only for 5 minutes, but I'm still off me rod. So, but I knew I had to do it. So I had a glow stick on one side, glow stick on the other side of this baiting pole, and I'd shove it 50, 60 yards, however far away it was, it probably weren't that far, up the snags. I shipped it through all the sections. So it was I could just about see the light. I'm still casting towards a set of snags, which is hairy as you like. But I'd walk around to the popular swims to see if I could see the glow stick, and I never could. No one's looking in the dark anyway. They're all looking at their phones. But I just had to make sure because I didn't want to fuck it up. I really was driven now. I remember like I'd gone to St Ives before that, and I'd gone here, there, and everywhere, and done a bit in Northey, and I'd really been about, as in miles wise, not close to home. And now I was like, right, Jake, just try and catch this common. You know it's hard. It's old. And it's fairly local, and just try and catch this common, you know. So I went all in for it, and on the first night I blanked, but by now I was putting in like your 20 litre buckets of pigeon conditioner. I could park right next to the out of bounds, walk up, slide down the slope into the woods like that, and then I was casting over the thing, over the baiting pole, dragging it in, tying putting the rig on and everything, and an 8-ounce lead and some bait and whatever, and then I'd run round to the rod. It's ages. We're doing it in the dark. Tighten up, run back round. I had a bit of pop up, a bit of foam on, and I'd tip the spoon, and then I'd make sure that bit of foam went where I wanted it, because there's a slope, and I just thought 8-ounce lead, that's getting nailed. And my line was going underneath the snags, but I'd done trial runs and everything to make sure there was no snags there, because you've got like 10 foot. So all the snags
super deep, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're dropping the ledge straight away, and just dragging them out like that, I don't think you're touching, and I never did. I never touched any of them snags. So if you can fish somewhere they've never been harassed, but safely, you're going to catch loads. And I'd started catching consistently. I'd had some... like that autumn, I'd had quite a few of the sort of, I don't know, if you flick through a few photos if you want to, but there was a few 30 pounders. I think all of them were 38. One was 30 pound, one was 28, but they're all now big uns, like they've all grown on. And so that one there was one like starbursty thing. It wasn't like the best carp in the world, but it was all right. And then if you just flick through, there's a few of them I put on. There's one, a night shot somewhere that was a real nice one. Where was it? So that one and that one. I really like that one. In the flesh, that was amazing, that carp. It looks like I've heavily edited it, but I think it's your TV.
Were you worried by the amount of fish that you were catching that it might blow the spot before you got the chance at the common?
It did, I think. Right. What happened? I remember I went to Spain and it really fucked it up, but I sort of needed this Spanish trip, and I was catching consistently. But I remember before I left, I put a block of salt in, which I've done quite a bit over the years, and like stupid amount of buckets of bait, because I was gone for a week. I say stupid amount, it was a small lake. Like I'd think nothing of putting it on a big pit. Probably 4 buckets maybe, I don't know. And these buckets are big buckets.
Yeah.
And that's, when I say bucket, I mean a big bucket. You know, a small bucket I call half a bucket.
Yeah.
So, or like your average size. So anyway, I'd gone to Spain for a week, and at the best time ever with Brad, and I'll make ditch out there, we know, through Frogmore, and you know, I don't smoke weed, but out there is legal and stuff. Yeah. And I just spent the whole week drinking beers, a couple of puffs of his spliff, enjoying it. I'm a dad at home. I've got to be switched on all the time. You know, it's like you're always switched on. Out there, I had a week of being switched off, and it was great, and I needed it. But I come back, and I was like, bollocks. You know, I fucked it now. I think the spot had blown, because the bait, I could see the bait had gone. I don't think, maybe birds had done it. There was no rotting bait there, but I never got another bite off it. And it could have been time of year. I don't know what it was. It could have been that I'd had quite a few bites. But, do you know, it didn't really matter in the end, because not long after we found out my missus was pregnant with our second child, she got some morning sickness and whatever, and I didn't go for quite a while. But when I come back, I was so fired up, and it was really busy. But I just remember it not deterring me, and I'd go around, and this was in the spring by now, it was April or March. I was going down and I was walking it in the midnight after work, before work, because my missus was always asleep because she was really ill, and she had this with the first one. I could walk it a lot. I see a few shows and stuff which told me where to put bait, and it was all in the same kind of area. But the swims kept being fished and stuff, and I'd change, and nothing was going right. And eventually it was like I avoided swim 10, which was the other side of this significant set of snags where I caught the dark one from. So I decided to fish swim 10 because it was just, I was avoiding it, but no one was ever there, but everyone was where you want to be. I thought, right, well, I'm just going to bait swim 10 then. And I knew it liked the open water, the fish, but I caught everything in the edge, like everything. Or if it weren't in the edge, it was to a margin that if you were around there, it was the edge.
Yep.
And I decided I fished 3 different swims now, and all based around these snags. And I thought, the one I'm going to catch that from is that set of snags, and that's where I've seen shows. One of them was quite big. So I went in 10, but I was baiting the open water because I'd actually seen the common in the open water, and I felt like it was significant. But it swam into this set of snags, and as it come into it, I didn't put a rod there that night, but I really noted it, and I'd gone and I'd really thought about it, and I thought, okay, that's there, sort of thing. I don't know. I remember getting 12 pints of maggots the week later, and I still walked around just because I was baiting that spot, but I still had a good walk around, and I noticed that they were all in them snags, the big ones, all the big mirrors. I thought, well, the common's got to be there. And by the way, the common is a greedy fish. I hadn't caught it, but most people catch it as their first fish. And a lot of them, I mean, one bloke done 60 odd nights and whatever, and it's a tricky lake because they are heavily fished for at certain times of year, and they are on edge. But that night, no pre-bait, nothing. I put a bait on a rig long where I'd been pre-baiting, and that night I'd had a curry with my mate. I weren't particularly quiet, but I had got in the waders. You're not allowed to do that, but I just thought, I have to have a rig around that corner. I just have to do it, and I put a big lead on, and I actually put a real sharp hook on, which you don't do when there's craze about, and that's the other reason why I put a lot of bait out. But I'd slung this rig out, never fished. There was not even a spot. It was just sort of right tight to some snags, and it was hard. And then I remember catapulting with a Maggie pole, ready to get banned. 12 pints of maggots. I was there for ages. My mate had come down. We all got a curry down, and we got 6 asahis, and I had 3 of them. He had the other, and he's like my best mate, not an angler. Bit of a trouble bloke, to be fair, but we just go back so far, and I had a great time with him. We weren't quiet at all, and then 4 a.m, I'd actually got up early because I was self-employed at the time. I was starting at work at 10 or whatever, and I see one on the spot, a little one go clatter out on the long spot, but I was getting liners on my left-hand rod, but I just for some reason assumed they were craze. And anyway, I thought this one's going to go. I went back to bed at about 6, and at 7 I was woken up to the take of death, and the rod had completely wrapped round, and I'd done put the storm poles, wedged the reel in and stuff, so it weren't going anywhere. But I remember thinking, the common don't fight, and this is fighting. So I knew it weren't the common, or at least I thought I knew. And I got it up to the top, and the one I'd never seen a common in there apart from that one, and I just see this giant common. Oh my god, and got it in there. I can't remember really what happened, but that was I felt like it was a real significant time of my life, my angling, everything. I felt changes were brewing, and I felt very free at the time as well. I started working in a barbershop that my friend owned, and I'd said to him, this is my last hoorah, this is my last job before I go do something else. And I was looking at jobs at EasyJet in recruitment because my twin brother works there. I knew I didn't want to do that. This was later on that I'd done all that, and I was looking at all these different things, but this was the trigger. While I was working in this barbershop, I knew I was looking for change, but at the same time, I might appear I might have appeared confident at the time. I wouldn't say I was particularly unconfident, but I just didn't realise my potential. And my friend who owned the barbershop, him and the girls and blokes who worked there were like, wow, you're so creative. Wow, you're so there. Not blowing smoke, but just being really nice. And I'd realised a lot about myself working there. It done a lot for my self-esteem, a lot for and they were really pushing me to go and do what I wanted to do. And they're like, Jake, we can see you ain't built for this sort of thing. And then it you know, I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or what, but
yep, absolutely.
You know, prior to this, I was, you know, I'd say I'd been on like a 5 or 6 year journey, like a real long journey that got me to this point. And this journey involved, there was a trigger while I was working in a barbershop that I was managing, which actually made me quit that job. I was cutting hair and I was cutting this postman's hair who used to be a footballer. And he said, have you ever read the book, The Secret? Now, disclaimer, I didn't read the book, but it just was a trigger. He's like, oh yeah, you know, manifestation, all that stuff. It was a bit airy-fairy for me, all that. So anyway, but I looked into it, and in that I looked into all this like self-help, like, and I was yearning for something, and none of that gave me anything, none of it. But I happened to come across this Terence McKenna who spoke about, you know, the use of psychedelic mushrooms. Right now, it intrigued me more than anything, and it took me back to a few years previous when I was in Jamaica with my missus, and this bloke had spoke to me about some psychedelics that he'd done, and he said, "There's more to this world than you'll ever know." And I know that now. And that really intrigued me. Now, whether there is or not, who knows? I know. I feel like I know. But anyway, I had 3 or 4 years of listening to this Terence McKenna bloke and 3 years. And I found it really intriguing. And he wasn't advocating anything, but he was an ethnobotanist who researched plants all around the world. And anyway, I'd decided that I needed some therapy. I can't remember what triggered that. I think I remember I was being really stressed out that my missus didn't like me going fishing, or at least I thought, but really I was really emotionally charged. And I was like, I just want to go. I remember saying to Mum, I just want to go fishing. I just want to do this. And, you know, she wanted Elodie and, blah, 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 you know, she's got it. And now all I want to do is, but really I had something in me that was the problem. And I spoke to my missus, we had a long chat, I burst into tears, first time ever probably in front of her. And I realised, right, okay, time to go speak to someone. And I again, it was one of them scenarios where I'd spend the last 60 quid in my pocket seeing this woman, right? And she wasn't even like very well trained or anything, but I think just being there and doing it, and that got me clear-headed enough where I started to make some changes. And I really enjoyed my fishing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And one of them changes was, right, you know, like, I've looked into this mushroom thing for a long time, and I remember telling friends about it. I've been looking for a long time. I'm looking at trying it, and they were like, "You haven't looked. You've never mentioned it to what you on about. You know, you haven't." But they thought I was just blagging them that I just wanted to do some drugs, and I'm not like that. I don't do drugs. You know, a plant ain't a drug. End of. And you know, I'm sure there's some weed out there you could call a drug because of the way it's grown and whatever nowadays. But to me, what I'd heard from this was something very healing and something, you know, beyond our comprehension, right? And I believed it for whatever reason. And I decided that I was going to, you know, very carefully try, and again, I'm not advocating it, try some psychedelic mushrooms, right? So by this point, I'd quit my job and I was self-employed, and it was a positive change, step in the right direction. The day that my little one was born, and anyway, I remember I had a series of taking of this drug, which involved which involved fasting and taking a very small amount, then a larger amount, and then a massive amount. And I explained to my missus why I was doing it, and she was very supportive. And she's never even tried a cigarette, so I thought if she's supportive of it, clearly there's something in it, or she believes there's something in it. So I sat down, meditated, and I ain't a meditator, right? I'd meditated because I felt the need to meditate. This thing was coming at me like a steam train. And within, I don't know how much you want me to talk about this and not about the fishing, but just stop me if I go on. But it was like this thing had taken over me, had told me to surrender, right? And had gone inside my body. And, you know, I'm very aware, by the way, that I'm on a psychedelic thing here, and had just told me, are you willing to die? Yes, I'm willing to die. All right, come with me then. And it showed me some stuff that there are no words for. And I just remember feeling like I'd been to hell, I'd been to heaven. And I'm not religious, I'm still not religious, but I'd been somewhere, you know, in another dimension, without a doubt. And it felt like I'd lived multiple lifetimes over 2,000 years. It was the most and I was no longer me, by the way. And the penny drop moment in that was, what's your name? Jake. And as I was saying my name, this thing was asking me these questions, but in another language. What's your name? Jake. No, it's not. It's gone. You haven't got a name. What's your hobbies? Fish? No, you haven't got any hobbies. And I'd forget them as it was happening. And what's your this? What do you have a daughter? Yeah, no, you don't have. And as these things were dissolving, I could see what I really was, and it was a soul, right? Now, this sounds really spiritual and all this stuff, but the way that I actually perceived it and see it is, it's not like airy-fairy religious book, woman who travels around Cambodia stuff. This was very real, and even if it's all rubbish, it's had such an effect on my life that it doesn't matter, does it? So I could see what I really was. I was this soul living inside this meat suit, and I understood that you're limited by the meat suit, but the one thing you're not limited by is your mind. And as I come out of it bumbling. I was a bumbling mess. I was trying to write down this information that I felt like I was given, and I was scribbling it out, and none of it made any sense, but a lot of it stuck in.
Have you got the notes? Have you got these notes still?
I've no idea. Probably somewhere. Yeah. I keep a lot of stuff. It was a doodle pad basically of ideas, and a lot. In fact, it was the pad that I actually wrote the. I'm not saying it was a masterpiece, but I wrote this topography film and was in that pad. So I will have it somewhere, definitely. But I'd scribbled down all this stuff, and I remember a lot of it was, which makes a lot of sense to me now, was like the answer to everything is love. Now that sounds like what? But if you just love everybody, then if they hate you, you won't give them hate back. So you will not create more hate in this world. A mushroom taught me this shit, yeah? So, you know what I mean? It was right from a book. And there were so many insights that I had, and I experimented it with for a short while, but the effects are more than long term. And anyway, at the barbers, and they just see me as Mr. Shroomhead now. And my hair's gone like a mushroom and all that, But anyway, I'm the most sober one out of all of them, because they go out getting wankered every weekend. And but they're all really nice people, and they really pushed me. And I'd had this change in me, and I was realizing it all and I was, I found myself like stargazing in the garden a lot of at night, because my missus was working not till midnight at that point. She was working night shift. She was getting home at 3-4 in the morning. So it was one of them times that it's make or break, one way or the other. And I just remember I just felt she fell pregnant. I was really happy about it, and that wasn't planned. But it was the right thing. The other one was planned. The other one, Elodie, was planned. Nova, we called her. She wasn't planned. So, sort of. So anyway, that changed everything. I was doing this job, and they were like, "Right, Jake, you need to go do what you need to go and do." And I was at my nan and granddad's in Clacton. They'd just moved to this dump in Essex, but at the sea there, so they were happy. And in the meantime, I'd fished the Lea Pit, caught that, and fished the bowyers, but fished it. I was so free on there, and I had this relationship better than ever with the lake, and it was great. It really was just, there was no thought, there was no methodology with what's the word, mythology method in it. It was just go and do it. And then it did involve a lot of early morning bait up, but and then sort of was at my nan's. I saw this advert that on Instagram, and it just triggered something. I went home and made that topography film. I started it there and then it just sort of, I'm not sure that you planned on talking about that at all, but that was what triggered that film is what triggered me to actually pursue it, and that gave me the confidence to pursue it, because I felt like I was onto something, even though I knew it was rough as you like and whatever. I just felt like, if I can do this with a bit of the right training, I can do some other stuff. And so that mushroom thing had changed my whole life.
So you obviously had the filming, and you had a very distinctive style from the word go with that, and I think it's one that you've tried to stick with
to some extent. If I ever do, and I'm really struggling to sort of, if the fish, bear in mind my head wasn't in fishing. I couldn't fish at that time because I knew Elodie was coming. Nova was coming. So I stopped fishing, which is why I made the film. I've thought about making a film since, but then I think, well, I'll just stop fishing. I ain't doing that. So I was really upset. My missus, she didn't watch any TV because I was using the TV to edit, because I'd smashed the screen on my laptop, and I had no keypad because that didn't work. I had a MacBook Pro, but I'd no keypad, so I was using external mic and whatever on this TV. The colours were completely different to what the screen should have been like. And it was very free in doing it, and I really enjoyed it. And I knew I weren't going fishing because the little one was coming, and I just had this great run of lots of big uns. First time in my life, you know, a lot of big uns, and I just it really the style has changed slightly because professionally, but if I ever do make another film, it hopefully will be a better version of that.
It was really well received as well, wasn't it? You know, I did see an awful lot of good feedback for your stuff.
I was really
something
surprised.
People like, isn't there, in what you do?
Because my missus watched it, she was like, "That bit's really boring there," and I just kept it in because I don't know, I just kept it in, and I never watched many. I watched all the Terry films. I never watched many films. Like it's not something I do. I don't sit down and watch a lot of you. In fact, I do it more now because I work in it. But you know, for me to sit and watch someone else do their own fishing, I'd rather paint a picture or something. And I love my painting almost more than anything. But so yeah, I don't know. It was what it was, and it was received really nicely.
I think, you know what, I sort of trailed it as this as somebody finding, in inverted commas, creativity.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you put that solely down to the psychedelic stuff?
What I was just going to say, and I'm glad you asked me that, was that I was really good at art at school, but it was never something that at home was, for one reason or another, was not celebrated. Not, you know, they tell me I was good at art, but it just wasn't something that was ever, I don't know, it was just like you just got by in life and that's what you did, and you know, you either got on the dole or you got a shit job. That was where I come from, you know. I come from a different world to what a lot of people do, and you realise that when you mix with a lot of people. We're all different and we all have our own struggles in different ways, and it's not that I've had it worse or better than anyone, you know. No one gets a manual in life, and that's something I learned, whereas what was holding me back was probably that I felt like I was underprivileged, whereas reality is that you got 2 arms, 2 legs, you've got just as much chance of anyone else, you know. But I couldn't paint for so many years, and I could just doodle, and it was a block in my head. It was this block that I had, and I'd done them mushrooms. And if I get stick for this, for saying what I'm saying, it's the truth. I'd done them mushrooms, and I did them right. And a month or 2 later, I'd sat down, and if you go to, you'll see that it was mushroom influenced.
I've seen 1 or 2.
Yeah, so if you go to that one there, yeah, that was my first painting. It looks really oversaturated here, but that was an oil painting, a real big oil painting.
No, I would look. Yeah, the colours on the TV.
And that was my first painting for since school. And I actually sat down and done 40 hours. My missus was working nights, and it was a great opportunity. And there's lots of mushrooms in the field there, but obviously giant ones growing out of the mountains and all sorts going on. You've got the alignment of the planets and
how thought about is this versus
there was no thought. It just happened.
It's wild.
Got some paints. I didn't even know what paintbrushes I was supposed to use, you know. I was, in fact, you're supposed to use, I've since learned, like linseed oil, refined linseed oil. I was using olive oil from the cupboard. Do you know what I mean? So, but I remember doing a painting at school that I used my own blood because I'm a serial nose picker. and it just so happened that, you know, and I got a good grade.
To clarify, that you painted that, so that's
oil painting.
I mean, it's incredible, mate.
That's on site. I gave it to a friend.
Well, I've been looking at it off just before throwing it up, and I mean, it won't do it justice. But the level of detail,
the cows shit on the cow shit in the grass. The spores find the cow pap because they grow. You know, the nitrates in cow dung's perfect, and that's how they arrive, and that's the influence behind it. But there was no plan behind anything really. It was, and the funny thing is that's an iPhone shot of the painting, so it's
really good.
Yeah, I know. I printed a load of it.
Actually,
yeah,
it's incredible.
I know, an old iPhone as well. It's just quite.
I'm comforted that there's at least a lake.
There's always lakes. There's always water in there. Always. Yeah. If you go,
detail's incredible, mate.
If you flick through, so the real.
This one. Can I throw this up?
Yeah, I mean that's a metre by a metre. That's on my wall at home. It just didn't photograph very well. I couldn't get the shine off, but
I like the colour.
big cow in there again, some drowning sheep, all sorts going on.
What is this symbolism? What's
that was a little bit more thought about, and this was, I mean, you know, the mushroom, by the way, I mean, was how I would describe that night is the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs a dark night of the soul, whether it's a near-death experience or a mushroom trip that's far beyond recreational, probably times 10. and or whether it's the absolute rock bottom despair. Like my mum had that, and it got her off of 25 years of alcoholism and drug use. So you need that dark night of the soul sometimes that really shakes you up and really kicks you up the arse. And probably that was one of those dark nights.
That's the inspiration for this one.
Not directly, but there was something very dark going on there. But the mountain there is Mount Meru at the center of the universe, which has been written about in so many different cultures. Supposedly at the North Pole. I'm not saying it's true or not. I've never been there, but it certainly geographically on our maps it doesn't exist. So it's probably more. What's the word?
Symbolic. Yeah.
Symbolic.
Yeah.
But there's an owl on a tree there, probably to the right where the sun is.
Oh yeah, see it. Yeah.
Got the sun, the moon. Again, you've got some different star constellations. But if you flick, they're the sort of your chakras, 7 days of the week, which are based on your planets. Monday's the day of the moon, Sunday day of the sun, Saturday.
So very
Saturn.
conscious. This one is very conscious.
Very conscious, and then this one is my favourite.
Yeah.
Now, one of my last days in the barbershop, my second one was just born to go and work in fishing. Basically, this was a real big painting that my missus loved in the wall, and you've got some real dark faces just about in the clouds.
Yeah.
The planets there, you've got Orion, the star constellation. The three kings in the Bible is the reference to the three. They align perfectly with all the pyramids on Earth, from Sudan to Egypt to France. So again, a little bit more thought about, but this one was a real trigger in this was a kickstart into the fishing world, because I'd done an art night, which the man I worked for, my mate, he said, look, come and do an art night at the shop. And I was working there just on my last month, and we done this art night, and that one sold for, it was doing really shit. Those people there, no one buying anything, and I thought, I've put 400 quid into this, like, it's got to work. And then his doctor come in, he's bought that for £1,000. I only put it up for £1,000 because I thought no one's going to buy it. We want it on the wall at home.
Yeah.
And he bought it, and then some other people triggered other people to buy lots of prints and stuff, and another original went for a couple of £100. And it wasn't about the money, but it was more about the confidence. So after that, I quit cutting hair, and it was into the fishing world.
Do you have time to paint? No.
I've got, we've all got the time, but do I find the time? No, but I've started lots of big paintings and not finished them. But maybe that's something for the winter. I really love it. I really love it, to the point where I don't need mushrooms or anything else in my life anymore. But what I do need every now and then is an evening with no exterior sort of stimulation, and to just, like you have a relationship with a lake, a short, intense relationship with a canvas, and it really is a relationship, to the point where I've been in floods of tears after painting pictures before, and just had these, and I'm sure it's triggered by the past, but as in the mushroom taking and the therapy, all of it. But I've had things like where it's like, you need to text your brother now and tell him that he's a man, because I've got a twin brother who's gay, and I always felt like he never felt to be a man. But it's like, well, you are, and I, like things like that. These insights come from stillness rather than from drugs or whatever. And so I'm not saying that the mushrooms helped, but the painting helped, and the therapy helped, and the fishing helped, and the missus helped. It all helped. Get me to sort of where I am now, which, I'm not saying I'm any better or worse than I am. I mean, like, consciously, I feel very different, and every year it gets better and better, and that's just carry on rolling with that.
Yeah, I mean, that focus that you get from being completely absorbed in a task, like the painting, is that comparable to the kind of focus that you can achieve when you're really set on a fish, or you're at the lake and concentrating solely on that?
I mean, obviously, I call them the mind control devices, but your phone's in your pockets really make it difficult, because email from work, the missus ringing, and just having kids. But yeah, definitely, especially like when you get right into the zone, like really in the zone, and that relationship that you have with the lake that I keep talking about, the baiting and all that doesn't start until you get right in that zone, and then you can fish while you're not even at the lake, not because you're baiting up, but because you go. Like, the instincts kick in without a doubt. And I've had loads of scenarios where that's happened, but the instincts tell you what to do. And hopefully what I'm doing now is through that. That is one of them moments. It might not be, but 100% you can gain that same level of focus. It's just more stretched out.
So as someone who thinks that maybe there are ways of connecting with the world that are, beyond most people like me, the way that I would understand it, does that mean that you're closer to your instincts and you can sort of leverage your instincts better these days when it comes to carp fishing?
I think just as a race, we've totally lost our, I say totally lost. Our instincts very hard to access now. So when you're wearing rubber shoes, you're not connected to the earth. Them little subtle vibrations from, that a deer or a tiger might feel, we don't have that anymore. And then we've got artificial light and the stars are, there would have been a time when people could look at the stars and know exactly what time of year it was. We can't do that anymore because one, we can't see the stars at night with light pollution and whatever else, and two, we're not that interested. We're interested in our phones and whatever else. But I have had times where, when everything's going right and when I'm maybe a little less addicted to the phone, like a lot of us are, and where I'm right stuck into the fishing, where instinct definitely plays a big part to the point where I might have like a light bulb moment while I'm in bed at night, and that will make me go fishing there and then, and feeling free is obviously a big part of that. That's a massive sense of freedom when you can go, right, I'm going to go fishing now, and I'll pack up right before work. Everyone's asleep, and you're out there, and it's quiet, and no one's awake. No one's going to bother you. So therefore, in your headspace, that headspace is more instinctual anyway, because you haven't got like the hum of the world, the awake world. But I've certainly had like moments where I've done something with no thought, like literally no thought. I've had quite a few of them in fishing and not in fishing.
Do you think though that instinct is just another way of describing input and output, like what we're seeing and feeling around us, and then that then creating an action, if you like? Yeah,
without a doubt, like 100%. But it's so subtle, and we struggle to read it because we're not looking for them subtleties, or we're not in tune with them subtleties anymore because of the way that we live our lives. So without a doubt, I mean, it's not magic. There's no such thing as magic. It is feeling, it could be, the animal within me, because at the end of the day, we are animals to some extent. The animal within me, if I'm in touch with it for whatever reason, there might be a certain weather condition or a certain air pressure that we don't even know we're registering, but we probably are, or something that makes you think ding, and you'll associate that with something you've learned previously.
Yes.
So it's
like,
not.
I must fish.
Yeah, like I must fish. Yeah, it's not. There's not any magic going on. It's definitely. I still think science to some extent with paradigm shifts and that is as much of a religion as Christianity, but not all of it. But there is a science behind instinct, I would say.
In terms of where instinct leads you more widely with your fishing, when you're choosing targets, for instance, do you allow that to be quite a conscious process? Because I'm wondering how you ever rocked up on, I don't know if we want to name it or not, but the giant Colne Valley lake.
Yeah.
200 acres, unknown stock.
I used to pike fish the lake next door, and I used to go there with Brad and his granddad. And I was very, Brad was the angler and I was the noddy. And I go along and he'd sort of set it up for me and whatever, but we were hardcore fishing. We're doing the whole winter on Troy, Tring, Wiltstone Reservoir, the big one, all over really. And every now and then we'd go to Smallford or Park Street, Frogmore, and we'd have an easier day. But quite often our winters were spent on big windswept pits, and our hands would be so cold we couldn't move them. And I remember seeing a bank of the big lake, and I don't know, just something. There was just something about it. I remember thinking that can't have any carp in it. It just can't. And then my mate fished the lake next door, had about 12 carp in it, and I'd gone to see him and. To go and see your mate. I mean, I weren't driving, I was that young at the time, but I think he would have been. But a mate of mine picked me up gone down there, and we had to wade in the dark over the river to get to where he was fishing. And I think we had 2 sets of waders, 3 of us. So it was like some people had to do multiple trips, but it was pretty hairy, that river. Like, you know,
it's not shallow.
No. And I remember seeing it there again. And this was in 2011 or something, like 2012. I don't know, something like that. And so before, or just right on the cusp of having a break of fishing. And I see it then. And by this point, I knew it had carp in it. I didn't know it had carp in it, but I knew that lakes in the Colne Valley have all got carp in them. And I remember sort of, it was just looking at it, and it was just this massive. I was looking at the length of the lake. I was in the river. The sun was like right low, so it was like red skies. And I'd fished a couple of big pits before that, and there was just not much, and not had much success. There was just something about it that grabbed me. And I had my break. I'll come back, fished the reservoir and the Otter Lake, and then I remember, but I hadn't finished up on the Otter Lakes in between. And the little one, my missus just fell pregnant, and I thought, I need to go and do something else, and something while I've got the freedom to really go in and put everything into. And my mate said, "Oh, why don't you go over there?" And as soon as he said it, I was like, "Yeah, why don't I go over there?" So I got straight over there, got the ticket, done. I'd probably done 30 nights that first year, and the first session I got close. The second session I got close. Real bad algae bloom. But yeah, I didn't catch nothing. But
what does close mean in that, you know, on a
I found them in the edge.
Few fish, right?
I found them in the edge. Oh, and there was another one later in the summer. The algae bloom just went, and I was walking around it with my mate. And I worked the next day. We had a photo shoot. I used to do a lot of photo shoots with the barber in when I was managing the shop, and I'd work the next day quite early. But we walked around there and a load of the other lakes in the valley, and we walked around his lake, and he found some fish. So he's like, right, okay, cool. I can't remember, put some bait in. But when we got to my lake, we'd found 2 in the edge, and then there was loads showing long, and there could have only been 30 fish in, let's say 170 acres or something. So I just slung a couple of choddies out and put one in the edge, and just rang my missus and was like, I had jeans on and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I'm not coming home.
Well, I bought a Range Rover, like it was 1,500 quid P38 Range Rover on springs, like proper Essex Boys gangster wagon. But I bought that because, not to show off, because it was a cheap, crappy thing by then. But I bought that to navigate that lake, because the gravel works had sort of filled up the sort of car park, and you couldn't drive a normal car through it. I've seen 2 cars there get busted by. Wow. Yeah, I ripped the bottom off of one of them, and he was just sat in his car, the bloke, oil everywhere. So I got this car.
You bought a car just to fish this lake? That's mad. Yeah,
I mean, I'd got the ticket, and I'd just done my clutch anyway. I burnt it out trying to get out of the mud at another lake, and I knew where I was going. So I got a car that suited, basically. And I mean, I used to say a prayer to get me to the lake, because it was such an unreliable wagon. But I remember getting stuck on the M25, some tape around the heater hose, filling up with water, and back on my way. I remember it overheating and just putting all the heaters on full blast and just thinking, hopefully it'll be all right. And, you know, I think it had done 400,000 miles by the time I'd finished with it, through the snow and all sorts. But yeah, I mean, it got me around the lake. It wasn't, I mean, it was a lot of walking, but a lot of the banks were out of bat. So you had one bank you couldn't fish because another bunch had access to that, which was like dead man's shoes to me. Another bank was Sailing Club, like a lot of the Colne Valley lakes are. And, you know, to get a quarter of the way out, you're casting probably 300 yards or something. I'd used like dinghies and stuff on other lakes before, but I felt like I'd sort of grown up a bit by this point, and I didn't want to be breaking rules and all of this. I wanted to, not that I ever felt that I'd used dinghies on lakes where bait boats were allowed, and I thought, well, I ain't using a bait boat, so I'm just going to dinghy it, because that, to me, that, I'm not saying it's cheating, but I don't want to do that. But if they're going to push them out there, I'm going to get rigs out there. So, but I didn't want to do that here, because I felt like these carp were unharassed, and I didn't want to take the piss out of them. I'm not saying I would have caught loads, because I probably wouldn't have, but I just wanted to legitimately catch a carp from there, and I knew I had 9 months to do it. So I went really hard, but I wasn't putting loads of time in. But I remember I'd done a 3-nighter that autumn, and I'd come across carp on 3 occasions in them, let's say 30 nights. Real bad algae bloom. Met a bloke called Fred the Boat. He was a real good bloke, and I actually really enjoyed sort of a social side to it, of just sitting there with, I mean, he'd fished raspberry too and silver wings, and you know, the list goes on. He'd been to a lot of lakes that I probably would never fish, but caught loads of big carp, told a great story, very charismatic, and I actually quite enjoyed, for the first time since Frogmore, just sitting there with an old boy who's out there doing the same thing as me, and just chatting about life, I suppose, and fishing. But you know, he was cheeky, and he said they call me Fred the Boat for a reason, but I never know whether he did do what he's known for. But that was we basically, it was it weren't a grueler because I loved it, but it was a long year of nothing. So no carp that year. But on the Otter Pit in the spring, I'd done a couple of sessions, but nothing. And do you know what? Talking about instinct, actually, it sort of fits right in here. So the next spring, my little one was born in January, and I went down there and I got a bit stick from the bailiff. So one of the blokes had ripped the bottom of his car out, and he'd obviously rang the bailiff. Oh, Jake's here. And you know, I kept myself to myself at the time, using no Instagram, nothing like that for a very long time. It's like I say, it's only with work that I started doing it. And he'd come down, and I heard him slagging me off in the swim next door, like proper slagging me off. He's hacking this and that, because I didn't do a work party.
Right.
And there were 6 of us who were allowed to fish it during the close season to look after it, keep poachers off. Mm-hmm. And what was the other thing? There was an otter scene on there. I don't know how bad it was. There weren't enough food to sustain otters on that lake. So, you know, I was very much, I really didn't want to take the piss out of this lake, because I had a very special privilege to fish it. And anyway, so I was bouncing between there and the Otter Lake, and I'd had some real good success that spring on the Otter Lake. I felt like I'd really got into a good rhythm with that, but I knew that I'd just done a 35 whatever night blank on here, and I really, really just wanted one, and that was it. And I walked up to the bailiff, and I had a bit of a row with him, and we'd sorted it out, but it left a bit of a taste in my mouth. But anyway, I drove home. I didn't fish. I was supposed to do 3 nights. This was when I had a string of 3 nighters in 3 months. So this would have been the April. And in the May, I'd gone down to the Otter Lake and put my rigs long. I won't tell you how I did that, but you know, I've said it before, to be fair, but you know, put my rigs long, and I would have caught that day without 100% would have caught. I knew where they were going to be and all that stuff. But I decided to reel in at midday, and it must have been earlier than that, and drive this silly old Range Rover down to the Colne Valley. And there was no thought. It was just all of a sudden I'm packing up, and I didn't think, why am I doing this? I didn't think. And then I'm driving to the lake, and then I get there and I find one straight away. But I didn't fish that swim. I decided to fish a swim, because I knew there was some deep water there, but I decided to fish the shallow ground, because I thought with this weather that was coming in, this wasn't a thought, but I know how I got to it. With the weather that was coming in, clearly they were going to get in there. And that night, I'd done 2 nights that session, and that night, they just, like I said, by now the little one was born. So my missus was actually suffering with a little bit of postnatal depression, and she could not work out why I wanted to go fishing and didn't want to be at home with them. Obviously I did, but I wanted to go fishing as well. And luckily that didn't last very long, but it involved me growing up as well to sort of fix that. But that night, 10 o'clock, the carp, half the stock or whatever, 15 fish had just rocked up in the bay, all backs out under the moonlight. And I was rubbing my hands together. There was no clear spots or anything. It was like weed like that. And they come in, and I remember for some reason I was fishing short rigs like that, just over the weed. Short zigs, sorry, just over the weed. And it was the wrong thing to do. I should have probably raked a little spot, waded out and put a rig there. But anyway, they come in and they left. And I weren't disheartened or anything, but I was supposed to be home at 1 o'clock for something. And it got to like 11, and just the whole stock had just come into this big, and the bay's 20 acres, but the whole stock's come into the bay. I was like, fuck me, like I can't go. And there's these two old school sort of, I've heard about them before. They'd turned up in the swim looking for somewhere to fish. Ray and Graham, their names were, really nice blokes on there. And they'd looked at it like, fucking hell, you got them all here, that sort of thing. And I knew that, I just said, mate, I said, jump in. As soon as I go, jump in straight in here if you want, no problem at all. But the bailiff who kicked off with me, had walked in my swim, was polite, walked out, I think almost an apology. He dropped a £50 note, and I thought about keeping it because it left a sour taste. Anyway, I rang him up and I said, you've left a £50 note here. And he come and got it and whatever. But I just decided there and then, I whipped one of the rods in, tied the most stupid rig on there. Like it was just a long, really long hair, long coated braid rig with like a break in the middle. Fuck knows what I was doing. And I decided to wade it out they like flanked this bank. So I waded it about 100 yards out or whatever. And I could see it clear as day. Like I was next to this tyre, so that was my reference point. And where I clouded up all the water, they went straight to it. And I looked down like that. And as I've looked down like that, this biggest mirror I've ever seen has gone, fuck. And just because they weren't scared of the margins or anything, because they were, like I say, unharassed. And he's bolted off. And then I've looked out there and there's a big cloud, like where my rig is. This is literally the same second. Looked out there where my rig is and there's a big cloud. Thought nothing of it. My line's fairly slack. There's so much shit on the bottom. It's all like old gravel works. And then I've just seen this common swim past me with a log, probably 8 foot long, attached to it, right? But swimming like normal, like that. Just, I don't know what was going on. So anyway, I've reeled in like 80 yards of slack like that, and then I'm attached to the fish. And I've never had legs like jelly like I did on that, during that fight. And 10 minutes in or something, I don't know, it was a real long fight. The log had fallen off, and then I sort of knew I was going to land it, because if it was going to come off, it would have come off. And yeah, I can't describe. That was probably the best, the purest moment in fishing since like watching Brad with his floaters down Riverside Road, or maybe my first double or something. That was as pure as it gets. I was there for something that no one else really was there for. There's a few of us, and I didn't weigh it. It was 28 to 30 pound common, but its mouth was just like to die for. It clearly had never been, who knows? I don't think it had been caught. And for me, it was, I didn't really fish for the rest of the year because I was so content. I was like, that no big one will ever do what that did, ever. End of. And I'd done 4 nights that year. So then them 3, I'd done whatever it was, them 2 nights, let's say, a night before that and a night after. So 4 nights on there in total. I went down late summer and done a work party by myself. Just
even the score,
yeah. I just thought I'd do whatever, and then that was me done on there.
I get so we have got a picture of that fish. I guess the biggest question that rises for me, if that ticks so many boxes, why stop? Because you're young enough that life isn't too short. All of a sudden, you could have carried on.
Yeah.
The second down.
Just assume.
Yeah. So let's have a look at some of the pictures anyway.
I've got loads, but I've lost them. I don't know where they are. So that was my first ever time of going to the lake. And that was
there's a rod there as well.
Well, there's a stick with a bit of sweet corn.
Is there?
You can see
the
sweet
stick.
corn. You see the sweet corn just
to the left,
to the right of his head.
Yes.
So like it's just to the right,
hung
and above,
up in the weed,
just above.
Oh yeah.
Up, right, left. Oh, I can see it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't really matter where it is, but yeah, there were sort of quite a few then. But they probably just spawned in hindsight.
Okay, resting up.
Yeah, and they were resting up, and I'm glad I didn't catch one. But what other photos we got on there? So there might be like there you go. That's the swim.
There's to go back to the swim. I love a scenic of a big pit. There's an atmosphere that you just don't get anywhere else.
Wading rigs out as well, and I have your rods up high because of the weed and stuff, and not really knowing how you're going to land them if the rod goes, but finding a way. It's proper wild fishing.
But my question, sorry, while we look at the fish, If it ticks so many boxes, why did you stop?
Well, I found that hard to answer when you asked me, but so that's the fish. But I think the reality was that the Otter Lake I went there to catch a carp.
To this lake, yeah.
That's why I went there and I caught one. And that's all that mattered to me.
I mean, not many people have caught carp out of that lake, surely. I don't know anybody that's caught a carp out of that lake.
There ain't many. I mean, I wouldn't like to say, 10 people ever or something,
yeah.
It's, I don't know. I know of probably 3.
I mean, in that neck of the woods, it will have been fished and carp will have been caught over the years, of course. But
I know Springate fished it for the bream a long time ago and whatever, but, I've since said that I'd love to go back there, but I don't know if I'd be welcome now being all over the Instagram and stuff, I don't know. But I think the reason I didn't go back immediately was because I had settled to score at the Otter Lake, and, that's just not a settled to score. That's the wrong thing, but I loved it. I loved that as well. I went there to catch a carp, and having that young child and the missus with the postnatal depression at the time and stuff, I didn't really want to go back and do it. It was a lot, that place. Like, not mentally or anything. Like, it was easy to do, but I just knew that I'm not an angler who needs bites or anything like that. But I just knew that for the rest of that year I didn't fish, and I didn't want to go and do that again the next year. I wanted to go, and the Otter Lake was almost like I sort of had its number by this point, and I just wanted to go there and put them rigs out long, or go there on the southwesterlies and fish that, or I didn't want to, like, you were waiting a lot for them to go into a bay.
Is that basically the only way you were going to catch them on this lake?
No, I had a plan for the winter.
Okay.
Of
you were going to do the winter on there.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the plan. I'm not going to say it because I might do it.
Yeah.
I think this plan is a far better way of catching them than that, but that plan
remains to be seen. Yeah.
Well, it might never happen.
No, of course.
But if it does, I honestly, I know I've just spoke about it, before, but if it happens, that's one thing that I just couldn't put anywhere. I just couldn't do it.
No, that's fair.
Not that, like, this isn't me saying, I'm going to actually secretly go and do it or anything, but you've got to have respect for those carp. They've lived a unharassed life, and just me talking about it, it's not ideal for those carp, is it? So I know that not many people are going to go and do it, but yeah, they've lived a life like that forever, and they deserve to continue. Do you know what I mean? But that's not the reason I'm not fishing there now. I'm not fishing there now because, or since I've just other plans and whatever else.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's always the attraction of the new, isn't there? In carp fishing, it's one of the joys of carp fishing is that you get to start again.
That is the other thing. I love new is great. New is like the fire of a new lake. I mean, generally I'll choose a new lake in the winter, and I don't know why, but I do like that it's cold and you spend the first sort of 2-3 months watching everything come to life. Like that's one of my favourite bits of fishing, and I always do it for the possibility of, like with the school pit over Frogmore, it was the winter. The island pit we did a bit in the winter. The leather pit, you'd always fish it in the winter. I didn't catch anything, but and then the Lea Pit was the winter, and I'm always, small lakes are easier in the winter than big lakes, no doubt, but I always try and do a bit in the winter in because I love it, but also in the hope that something magical happens, because in the winter it's just better, isn't it? It feels, you're by yourself, stinking a carp, wet, cold, but for some reason it just feels better than any other time of year. So
absolutely, and to, summer there's more stuff to do, isn't there? Socially, like family, everything seems to kick into gear throughout the warmer months. There's definitely, I've had years where I've got going in the winter, definitely. More so than, if anything, I'll lose interest after they spawn. And that's,
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. My least favourite time of year is the spring, because you can feel it in the air that everyone's after the same thing. And when everyone's after the same thing, I can lose interest a little bit. I like to do what I want to do at my own pace. It's never about the bites. It's never about catching them all. I've said it 100 times, but it is about the relationship with the lake.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about relationships with lakes that perhaps are less obvious, because we talked off air about park lakes, 2 of which you've fished, 2 of which probably would seem like absolute hell to most people. So you've got the Otter Pit and then the Lea Valley lake as well.
Yeah.
Both of which you've been successful on. How much more difficult is it to make a relationship with a lake where the public are there the whole time, and on the face of it they could seem like difficult prospects?
I think, like, I like the atmosphere of a place, so I've always wanted to go to Oxfordshire and experience what Nick and Tel experienced a long time ago. But will I ever? Probably not, because does that exist anymore? Not that I know of. And I'm not talking about Stone Acres and or the Big S or what. There's certain parts of the world that you want to experience, and the Lea Valley was one of them. And the sort of North Beds, North Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, that kind of sort of flat, reed-lined, something about that. I don't know what it is, but the Otter Lake, I was planning to fish the lake next door, busy Park Lake, all sorts going on. Went to walk around it and just fell in love with this one. And that started. And I didn't know what was in there and all that sort of thing. But
I'd never even heard of people fishing it, I'll be honest. Yeah,
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. It just gripped me there and then. It's never about the target. I mean, the target comes. The target happens, and sometimes I wish it doesn't. Like for me, wanting to catch Moonscale at the minute, it's as much of a curse as it is a blessing. I'd rather just want to be there, because that adds an element of want to it rather than just being. I just want to be. And
there's no freedom, is there, whilst you've got that?
No, but if it happens, it happens. It is what it is.
And then it is ultimately very freeing, I suppose, if you are able to draw a line under these things.
It is, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing. But with the Otter Lake, it was total freedom, like it was with that one. That's why I didn't want to sit on there and catch the big one or whatever, because that could have ended up a grueling sort of, having a fish in your consciousness permanently is not a healthy thing. Having a relationship with a lake probably is, and being happy when you turn up,
you're there,
and when you leave, almost being a bit gutted that you're not still there. And the Otter Lake is one of it. It still is that, But I mean, the public. I mean, I remember on the Otter Lake, nowhere near as bad as the Lea Valley, not as bad as Frogmore, but all of the lakes pretty much I've fished have been public apart from one. And they all offer something different. The Lea Valley, bandit country, wild, wild west, shagging in swims, Johnnies everywhere. You don't leave your gear. Whereas the Otter Lake, you probably could leave your gear. I had a sort of, I don't know, I'll call it an alcoholic, but a girl drinking cider, and I had a few Heinekens, a big bottle. And she said, "Oh, do you want to make that a snake bite?" And come and sat in my swim for like 3 hours. And I remember thinking, like, how do I get rid of her without being rude? Because my missus come walk the dog round here later.
Yeah,
it's one of them. But I mean, in terms of the Otter Lake, the public was never really a problem. They're actually quite nice, a lot of them. They'd ask you like about your spomming. Oh, what you caught? It's nothing,
Yeah,
and that would be a bit annoying. But there was like sort of grassy banks, lots of snakes, that kind of thing, and you felt like sometimes you were alone. And at night, at barn owls at night, that kind of thing. But these carp were wild. They were as wild as they get, and that was the draw. And even if you put that in the Lea Valley with the goings on that you get there, I still would have loved it, because the carp in there, the unharassment of carp is important. And the first season didn't catch anything. Second, I don't know if you want me to tell you what I caught, but first season I lost like 8 or something.
How?
But that was
why? All the same reason?
No, I lost 2.
Well, that's really unlucky then.
2 in one session, mono snapped.
Yeah.
The muscles in the weed, I guess. Then I got into the braid and I had like a series of hook pulls. But then the weed got so bad that was, I think, because they had soft mouths and I was using braid, and I just had a 4-year break, and I don't think I was on it yet, because I went to the reservoir after that, and it all, like straight after, 2 weeks after pulling off of there, and it all went swimmingly. So I lost a load. Come back the next year, and I ended up, I flukily turned up on a southwesterly, and they would just like, it was like douche, 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 and I'd waded all the out of bounds with Brad. And Brad had carried on fishing it at that time, and I didn't. And he had the same fish twice. We only had one, we had it twice. So it just shows you how low the stock is. I'd say about 20 fish now. But they were getting ottered like bad, like always getting ottered. But we found the stock. And this is something that I nearly said on another podcast, but I never said it. But I'd found a big mirror that I've never told anyone about. I've told friends about, but I've never told like
the public.
Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? So this big mirror, big chocolatey thing, no one knew what was in there. You know, I don't know how big it was. It was certainly a 40 pounder. And that's really what I was fishing for in the end. I was seeing it a lot. I've got it on video on my phone. I think it's on my Instagram, but you wouldn't know. But there's a video of it. And I kept seeing it for like 2 springs, but I'd see it all the time. I'd worked out exactly where they were in April and May. I knew it. I could just go down there. It's to the point where you'd have the worst, coldest wind ever, and they would be in the 18 inches of water with backs out, with a real bad chop. Or you go up and you'd think they weren't there, and then one would just go whoosh, like that. And at 300 yards sometimes you'd think there was 1,000 carp in there, because they're just going bang, 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 bang. So I'd waded this whole area, and me and Brad had sort of worked out roughly the stock. Brad had gone and fished the lake next door, and I carried on with this one. And my first one was, I just flukily turned up on a southwesterly, and they were showing everywhere, and I lost one and caught one, 28 pound common I think it was, and then a couple of weeks later, same conditions on a full moon, lost one and caught one. It was one of these lakes. It was like, you know, there was a bloke there called Dean. I think he'd done an 80 odd night blank, and we both agreed that this lake was cursed. You know, there was an old boy there who used to fish there, and he died. And I'm not saying, I don't actually believe in this sort of stuff, but at 3 a.m, when your bivvy goes whoosh, gone, it was a storm, like. Yeah. But and there was so many goings on, like my constant migraines down there. But then there was a sewage thing down the road. I'm not saying it was cursed, but it felt very cursed.
Everything was against you.
Everything was against you. You know, it was raw. You know, like I remember at 1 October I hooked into a fish, and for no apparent reason the braid went ding. Bear in mind, I've fished. I'm very confident in I was a 60 pound leader and real strong braid, and it's never failed me anywhere else. I had it the other day. It was grating on this snag, and everything was absolutely fine. But I use the same stuff I always have used. But anyway, that year I'd pulled off, and I'd actually gone to fish the Colne Valley water. And the next year, I decided to draw a line under it, and because that whole spring I hadn't seen the big mirror at all, and I started and I haven't seen it since. So I started fishing the lake next door, and I didn't like it. It was far more public. I just didn't like it. I didn't get on with it. There was quite a lot of carp in there, and it just wasn't for me for whatever reason. So I decided no. So I'd done a couple of nights, and I remember I had this light bulb moment of you need to get round the out of bounds on the other lake now. And bear in mind, this other lake, I'd seen one angler, never see a bailiff or anything like that. So I just packed up, went round there, and they were there. But this was really like, they just shouldn't have been there, sort of thing. But this is when the penny dropped, sort of thing. I caught loads from there, but I say loads. I done all right from there. I didn't catch loads ever, but I basically tied up a rig, put all the gear in the cart, and snuck and done a trail of smashed down a trail of reeds one way and then the other, so you could never see that I was in there. Waded past sort of 50 yards of reeds or 40 yards of reeds, and see the fish there. Plopped a rig out. Realised it was probably half a rod length short, and they just weren't coming. So I reeled the rod in, spooked 2 on the way in, cast back out with no bag on it or anything, casting pretty much blind. And within 5 minutes or something, I remember I was squatting, and my legs were burning, but it didn't bother me at all. But because I was so when you're looking at carp feeding, you're like, oh my God. And out of all these commons, there was this new mirror that I'd actually seen a photo of back from 2008 or whatever. So I know of 2 captures of that a long time ago, but I never knew that it was still in there. I'd never seen it, and I'd seen lots of carp jump out of the water and stuff. And it just literally had about 5 twists and turns. I could see all the whites of the scales, and then it just went bang, hook bait in the mouth, bolted off, and then I'm exposed. It's literally like, I don't know, 70, 80 yard run, and I'm out in the reeds now. And I've seen the bloke with binoculars looking at me, and I literally got it in as quickly as I could, netted it. The elation, I could not. It matched it. Well, it's hard to say, but because you can't directly compare them day for day. But it's top 3 moments of all time fishing wise, And the first moment was probably that moment with Brad down Riverside Road. So that's how big it was. But to me, that was something that should have been ottered. A big disc of a mirror, big scales on it, quite a clumsy looking thing when it was feeding, but it wasn't. So it defied everything. And then my awareness of it was like that it actually still existed was 5 minutes before I was holding it. But then I also had someone running around. I knew that coming around a big pit, but coming around to come and kick me off. I just knew it, like the way he was looking at me, and he'd come round on his bike. And I'm like quickly doing self takes with this 10-second timer, thinking, but I didn't care. I just didn't give a toss. And I remember walking out the reeds, like chucked my gear down there, walked out the reeds. I'll talk about the fish in a minute. And as I walked out, he said, "Oi!" I tried to pretend to be a bird watcher, but I was in waders, soaked, stinking. I was like, "All right, mate, how's it?" And he was like, "I saw you." Oh, for fuck's sakes. I said, "Look," there's nothing you can say that's going to put this smile off my face. I've just caught this fish and whatever, I tried to describe what had happened, and he sort of understood it. And I got away with it. I gave him like 20 quid or something to go buy yourself a couple of beers, because you could fish it on a day ticket.
Right.
And I didn't have a day ticket. So, and I didn't have the ticket to fish it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just didn't see the bailiff, but then you're not going to in the reeds, are you, I suppose? But that was one of them. I'd fished it legitimately to some extent from swims for a long time. I felt like it was kind of my lake in a way. And I know that's quite a funny thing to say, but I had it to myself, and I just felt like it was mine. I'd go there and I was very in tune with it, and I'd seen so many sunrises, sunsets. I had done a lot of baiting up and all this sort of stuff I won't go into, but for me, I didn't weigh it, not the biggest carp in the world. It felt like a mid-30, maybe 34 pounds, something like that. But if that was 20 pound, I think the buzz wouldn't have been far off what it was. It was just the fact, it looks like quite a young one as well, but it's been about for a while. And
if you've seen it back at, in
08,
and
so it was 11 years before. It weren't far off that size. So, and it was on an old shitty website as well that I'd found it, and I saved it. I've still got the photo of it. Like it was some bloke, real tree, top to bottom. I wouldn't like that, So yeah, mate. I don't know.
Do you think that what you do is different to most carp anglers, and what you're looking for is different to most carp anglers?
Yeah, I mean, I can fall in the trap of getting a ticket and fishing the same way as a lot of other anglers, and I have done recently fishing in the Lea Valley. But what I'm really looking for, or what it's like a symbiotic relationship with you and the lake, and like I felt like I did have that on Bowyer's, the other lake. I did have that, even though it was totally different to what I've ever done before. I mean, I fished in the Lea Valley, but just different. But if I got that same feeling on linear, I'd be there tomorrow. And I might, I don't know, but I probably won't. But I guess so. I guess it is different. The fact of the matter is, I haven't caught dozens of big uns, and I haven't, whatever. But I suppose it must be different to sort of for people to be interested in to hear what I've got to say. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So I guess so. I mean, I never wanted that list of known carp in my album or anything like that. That's never really interested me. I just want to enjoy it, and it's as simple as that, and as long as I'm enjoying it, and that might be fishing for carp, fish in the sea in Cornwall, that might be that, who knows, but at the minute I love catching carp. Yeah.
I think you touched on it throughout the conversation, but I don't want to let you go without talking about the reservoir. because I just think some of your shots from there are some of the photos that I remember from the last few years in a world where nothing stands out, really. The water shots of some of the carp, and these are interesting fish. Can you tell me a little bit about how you found out about that place? And
so, Verulam, that basically ran Frogmore, acquired a water. They acquired Aldenham, and there was a bloke called Adrian Turco, and he said that he used to fish it back in the, I don't know, 20 years before that, and this was late 2000s, 2008, something like that, when he told me, and he'd said they'd done a 27-pound linear all this time ago, and I thought nothing of it. I was young and whatever, and I walked around there not knowing what was in it with my missus. I've been with her 10 years, is that right? Yeah, so this would have been 10 years ago. Thought nothing of it, still didn't know what was in there. I'd always heard of this big ghosty, and anyway, I went down in the Colne Valley with my mate to go visit him, bought him a KFC or whatever, and he just showed me a few pictures of the fish in there. None of the ones that I ended up catching, actually, like some maybe smaller ones. And he was like, this is over there, didn't you? I was like, really? And I'd not long been back into it. I fished the Otter Lake, and my nan for my birthday bought me a Verulam ticket, and I remember being a little bit like, I don't want a bloody Verulam ticket. I've fished there. There's nothing
Bless
there.
her.
Yeah. Well, little did I know, it'd given me access to this place, and it was a country park, so it was really, it was like massive trees.
Beautiful place, actually.
Yeah. Very historical as well. Not a gravel pit, hand dug, all that sort of stuff. Big, but like almost estate lakey in the sense that
Have we got pictures of this?
Just silt.
Not the lake. Oh, you got lake shots. Yeah.
Some
Just
crap
like,
ones.
doesn't make
So you go to
We're going pre-family, aren't we?
pre-family, and then
There you go.
that one.
Yeah.
That one. So if you go down, there was a shot. My first fish. Go down.
There you go. Let's have that one for starters.
That one for starters. Okay.
No, not the fish.
No.
No, we're working up to that, Tobes. That one. Yeah.
So
Just gives you a flavour as soon as we're describing the lake. You've got mature trees. You've got a concrete dam. It's got sort of arms, hasn't it? If you like.
yeah.
That's what is that.
Yeah.
It's the estate lake vibe.
Very, mate. It feels like an estate. I don't know what it is, but yeah, and you know where the car park is. There's big plumes of silt, and they love a show. Shallow, yeah. Really shallow. You could wade most of it, which was really handy, to be fair. Basically the plan was to just lap it and find them and blast rigs at them. That was the plan. And I think the first three nights, so like I'd done 3 separate nights. I used to do a Sunday night back then when I was managing the barbers. I was no walking or anything, just doing my night a week. And I found them in this bay and just blasted choddies at them, never caught anything. And then the 4th night I did it, I thought I'm just going to wade down there. So I waded a bottom bait. I'm sure the bottom bait played a massive part, but just a very simple bottom bait rig. Big boilies, not much bait, 7 to 10 boilies and a few tiger nuts. Yeah, just waded really long, sort of stamped the lead in. I remember thinking at the time that I'm wading this rig back, so I don't want to drag it, but also I really want to nail them. And with an 8-ounce lead treaded in, it's probably a bit unfair really, but and obviously it was dropping it straight away. I was fishing leg clips, but with no tail rubber on it. I don't know why I was doing that. I mean, probably better just to push it on a little bit, but at the time that's what I was doing. And I remember, because I had eyes on where they were, I saw cratered sort of areas and I avoided them. I just thought, well, that's been done. I might have been wrong. It might have been good to put them in there. But anyway, that first night, I'd put the rig in, just one rig there, down the bay, walked back, blasted a choddy to some pads. It's cutting off the bay really, but that's what I did. And I was with Brad. Really nice to fish with Brad. And he'd just put like 3 rods out and scattered a load of bait over it. And he had my first lot I had one.
Which rod? On the one
on
you
the
weighed
long
down?
on the rod down there. Like it's bowstring, and then I just got a massive drop back, reeled in a load of line, and it was it was relatively easy fight. There's a lot of Canadian in there, in that area. So yeah, I had that one. If you go onto, there's a sunrise photo of me lifting the sling out of the water, but this is one of my favourite. Brad's no photographer, and back then I didn't even have a camera, and he just, now I'd sort of, if someone's doing photos, I'd quickly set it up and give him the camera. Whereas there, he just went bang on auto.
Yeah.
Look at it. It just, to me, was like, oh mate.
In a way, when someone who's not looking to capture the moment captures the moment, there's a sort of truth to it, isn't there?
And not only that, but he's when you're looking to capture the moment, sometimes it can be a bit artsy fartsy.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like, I'm sure that if you, that's probably been a photo that's been WhatsApp saved, this and that, but if you really zoomed into it, I'm not asking you to, but I'm sure it would be probably out of focus or whatever. But Brad just went bang, bang, bang with a camera and got 3 amazing shots. Like my favourite ever photo. Not saying it is the best photo in the world or whatever, but just that time was just so great. I really loved it. I felt like I was encapsulated by these trees, because you're fishing right in this sort of wooded area.
Giant trees there as well.
Giant trees, yeah. And you're away from the public, but then you've sort of got maybe 20 yards and then you put your rods on sticks sort of to get the right angle or whatever. And there's old platforms where you've got the skeletons of old platforms in there, which is where I put my net. And it's just something exciting about, generally I wouldn't put the waders on, just run out into the water, slip some old trainers on. I used to bring 2 pairs. And when you got them takes, it was just, I think I'm using a Delkim and a Fox alarm. I've not even got a Maxion alarm. I've just got back into it, and I'm trying to buy gear and that. And it was like, wah! And I just had the most grueling year on the Otter Lake and caught nothing. I've got into it in January, and I'm yet to catch carp. So this is, we're in 2016, and this is, I started on there in September. So this was September the 11th. Yeah. So I got obviously not a good day for everyone, but a good day for me. But yeah, I don't know what it was about that morning, but it just, everything after that just flowed really nicely. And I remember the week after I'd gone, and I failed to say, when I was walking back to the rods after I put that long rod out, I'd seen a linear, a real long linear, and it brushed past my waders. I've got photos of it on my phone.
No way.
And it turns out that was the one that I caught a week later, known as the Big Lin. So I'm in my pants. Get the photo of me in my pants up. But that was the Big Lin, and that was, one of the...
Hang on, that was the Big Lin there that you caught, the first bite?
No, so I had 2 bites that morning. I had a common that's not on there, and I caught a mirror. You'll see there's a couple of shots of it.
Yeah.
Sort of poorly exposed, foggy background.
No, that is the Big Lin.
That's the Big Lin. So if you go... the terrible organisation from me, but that one.
This one.
Down. That's the one there. Yeah. So basically,
lovely carp, mate.
Oh, mate. I mean, that's like your bog standard. And look at it.
Yeah.
Like the mouth was amazing. The just scales battered along it. I don't know what, when you see them lines across.
Yes.
I love that. It's like almost like makes them look mean, and I just love it. I like the shots where they bend a bit and you see all of that.
It's the muscle, isn't it? It's the bands of muscle that allow them to.
But that there's like, there's no bend in it. It looked like that.
Yeah.
It looked ancient in the flesh. I'm sure it was.
And having just got back into it, were you in a position to appreciate what you'd caught?
Yeah. We were taught a certain way, not on purpose, but down Frogmore, there was a culture down there. I didn't do the day tickets or anything. I'd done a bit during Frogmore. I'd done a bit down Stanborough after school. That's just because we wanted to go catch carp after school. But really, it was about the proper carp. It always was. Like, that's the school pit fish I had under the ice. Like, that was, like, I knew that was a proper carp.
Did
and
you,
I was
even
only
then
14 or whatever. Yeah, I just 15. I knew it was. I just knew. I took my 2-tone chocolatey brown. I hadn't been caught for 5 odd years, and I was just looking at it, mate. That's always going to be there. And if I'd have started in another way, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. In fact, I might not be doing it at all. But it's always about these things that just shouldn't exist. Like for the people walking around them lakes, they don't know they exist, and they don't know. Even if they know, oh, I saw a big one in there the other day, they don't know that exists.
No.
And just look at it. But then, the week after is when I caught that big lid.
How are you catching these fish? So you say you're looking for the disturbed bottom and then simply wading rigs out and...
So, but at this point, I was wading rigs out, braided main line, which I'd learnt from the Otter Lake, 60 pound. I was using the snag leader, which I still use now. Big leads, lead clips, no tail rubber on, and then just I was fishing coated braid, like long coated braid rigs, like really long, with just a stripped back hair
because you
and
thought
a bottom bait.
The silt
they're
might
in the
consume the kind of the rig.
I think like if you're fishing a pop up, like, and they're puffing that silt up, like they're digging. They have to dig for food. Clearly, that's been bored out not through angler's bait, but through the hunt of something in the silt.
I've heard of this before. I've heard of people fishing really silty lakes, and the mistake that they make is that they fish pop-ups, whereas the fish is below that, feeding.
The school pit, I used to fish bottom baits, same thing. School pit, the school pit now is about 4 inches deep. It's a sad shame, but over the years it got shallower and shallower and shallower, where it was just neglected and there was no carp in there. But all of those carp from the Lea Pit and the Island Pit and all of that, much of them, the original, certainly come from the school pit. So that sustained a decent depth for many years until it was abandoned, and there was only when I fished it probably 8 left, and it weren't enough carp in there to and slowly it got siltier and siltier and siltier, and obviously they're going to dig for the food in the silt, but that ended up with the
and were you baiting for these on the res?
No,
just
I was
simply reacting to what
finding
you saw.
them. I know I've said all this stuff about baiting, but your style changes with your life. If I got 2 nights a week and 3 walks a week, I probably wouldn't even bother baiting up, or when the time is right. It's all about the odds, isn't it, in your favour?
It is, and it sort of works really well for the purposes of this pod, that your fishing was so different pre-kids.
Oh yeah, it was so different.
Like you were more reactive.
Couldn't be any more different.
That's a mad fish, that one.
Yeah, that's an incredible one. So tell us about this one, because this is the next week, yeah?
Yeah. So although I didn't know about this fish, people knew about it. I mean, it was still relatively quiet now, but I did not know that was in there. But I'd had friends who had caught it who kept it super quiet. We were still kids when they were catching them. They were older than us, and they'd sort of left Frogmore and gone and done their thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it looks like basil, but I remember looking at it thinking it looked like basil. Not that mattered to me at the time. It is what it is. It's its own beast. And if them lot were fishing for that at the time and that was documented, that would be what it is. It probably wasn't very big back then, but you know what I mean. Like they are what they are, and they all deserve, like, for me it's still one of the best carp I'll ever catch. It was certainly old back then. I think because it wasn't in a gravel pit, it looks cleaner than your gravel pit carp that just live a hard life. But like, the mouth on it was amazing. Big head on it. It was really long. I mean, the fact that it brushed against my waders a week before, and then that was the one I caught. And that's happened to me quite a few times, where you see one in the water and you've almost stamped your name on it without you even knowing, and you have it a week later. Like, that's happened. Yeah, it happened with Goldie over thingy. It's happened there. It's happened more than once. And I wasn't fishing for anything specific. I was there to catch carp.
So on this trip, what did you simply repeat?
Yeah, I went round found them. Saw that they were there.
Same area as the week before.
Same. Yeah, exactly the same. Probably different rig placement, but you used to have to run over the silt because it was such a build up that if you stood still, you'd sink. And I got done one night the week before this, so I got done and had two bites. But doing that in the dark was hairy, and I don't know if I'm stupid enough to do that anymore. I say that. I know what I'm like sometimes. But yeah, you'd run across like this sort of 20-yard stretch, and you would be really like, and there was a few times where it was really hairy, but doing it in the dark was even more stupid because you had to sort of hug this margin. You line, you had to try and then get it straight. But But yeah, it was a repeat of the week before. That was the last one I had. So I had 3 out of that bay, and then they disappeared. Well, they didn't disappear from that bay because my mate Kieran, who I met on there a month later, he caught them out of there. But I weren't seeing them in the bay anymore when I was there. I was seeing them near the sort of, there's a farm there. Have you been there at all? Yeah, there's a farm, and I saw them around the car park bay or whatever you want to call it. I was walking around and I poked my head in a bush and I just see one just jump out of the water. And there was not a lot. It was probably 50 or 60 carp in there, but there was a lot of small commons and a few mirrors. And when I say a few, 10 or 15.
Yeah.
And I just got really lucky. I didn't put the photos on, but I caught quite a few of the commons. But I saw the fish there, and I waded in that car park bay, and it was a really hairy wade, even worse than there. And I'd done it once, and I thought, I'm not doing this again. So I decided, funnily, before we'd even caught anything, I remember a wind went into that car park bay. I must have counted 200 shows. We were going paintballing the next morning. I was fishing with Brad, and I was like, Brad, you need to get here now, like from work. It was like you'd see 2 out of the water at the same time. But he got down and they'd stopped, but they were showing still, like every hour you'd see a show 200 yards out, roughly. And I remember I saw one show that I'm convinced was the other linear. There was 3 not identical, but there was 3 linears of the same ilk in there. There was that one drop scale and one they now call the double-sided or something, had 2 different sides to it. But at the time, I'm sure it had only been caught twice before I'd caught it, or at least that's what we were told. And I'd only ever seen 2 photos of it. Because it was such a small bunch. I think there was a 15-man syndicate at one point. Everyone sort of knew the crack. It could have been caught years before, and doesn't really matter either way, but I'm sure I saw it show. Anyway, I thought next time I'm boating out there, because everyone used bait boats on there anyway, and I didn't have a bait boat, didn't really want to do it with a bait boat, but I thought I'm going to get a dinghy. So I went down to Argos, got a 4-man yellow banana thing, and it just weren't at all for the job. I did it once, I caught a little common. The next time I bought a little one from Millets, it was 15 quid, but it's still going now. I mean, my mate Kieran's got it.
Is that the one that's in some of the pictures?
It's one that's in the shot, yeah.
There's a shot toast of it, yeah. But of it well and truly on display as well, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I'd had a chat with...
Oh, there you go. There's one of him boating out. Let's go with that. No.
That one, yeah, there, yeah. So, yeah, broad daylight, got in trouble and all that sort of stuff. Young, stupid. But so I've got rigs on the dam wall, and I've got a line over one shoulder, a line over the other.
Oh, that in that shot, yeah.
So I'm going to drop the rigs.
You're gonna do both and bait.
Yeah, and I did the third last. So I've done it like that since. Quite a good way of doing it. So they're over my shoulder in the bucket, and the bucket lid's closed with 8-ounce leads. So there was like where I was seeing them from around the back. I'd go around there. There's a sort of this. They're like this. I'm going to get this wrong. It's like Pont and Aegon or something. These like sort of lilies that look like that. Got them in the pond.
Pot McGeaton.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to remember that word. I get it wrong every time.
So,
but
yeah, I know the feeling.
But basically, I was going to the end of that and just dropping blind. I knew it was all silt. No, I dropped it in the daylight there. But after that, I started doing it at night because I got in trouble. I'd done it 3 times in the light and got away with it, but I sort of felt like we were allowed for some reason. For reasons I can't say. I don't know if I was getting stitched up or what, but anyway.
Yeah.
When I found out you weren't, and I got real told off a few times, I just carried on doing it at night. You know, by then I knew the power of it, and everyone was bait boating, and I weren't, I was going to carry on doing it. So anyway, I caught a couple of commons or whatever, and from that long spot. And then on the full moon in October, this was, I think I'd done 9 nights on there in total. So this would have been my 7th night. I'd boated the rigs out. 8 o'clock at night, one went off, and it was a small mirror. It's like a sort of levery mirror. I don't know if there's a photo there or not. You might want to see it, you might not. But
absolutely.
So that was a good start. I was almost a little bit gutted that the rod was out of action. I didn't put it back out. No, I got it the wrong way round. So if you go down, I actually had the friendly mirror, which is go up,
The night shot.
up. There you go. So that one, and I was really happy with that one. Brad had caught that. I'd seen it on the bank, and it's got like a busted mouth, which I'm assuming it finds really hard to sift through the silt. Therefore, it's easy to catch on an angler's rig because it's more reliant on angler's bait, which is why it's the friendly, I suppose. So yeah,
Really cool carp.
oh mate, wicked. I can't remember who it was, but someone said it's like black eye sort of head. I haven't compared it, but you know, it was a very if you see that, you know it straight away. Do you know what I mean? The scales were obviously, weird. It's almost like a linear, but lower down.
Yeah,
really strange. And there was lots of little zips and stuff in there, like real ancient looking things. I never caught any of them, but yeah, mate, that
so he was the first one.
That was the first one, and then in the morning I had the leathery one, but I was gutted that I had that leathery one because I just wanted something special for some reason. So if you
and these are you boating back out, you going back out at night with the
for some reason
you're dropping two side by side then, and you're happy to leave one if one goes. Is that the?
I was dropping, so I dropped one, and then I'd sort of scoot over because the bay goes in like that.
So you're not worried about the line bowing round as so much?
8 ounce leads, I'd literally just go back and tighten it back up.
Yeah,
there's not weren't really, being a silty estate lake, there was not really any snags to worry about. So if you go up to, I should have named these, shouldn't I? That one. That was it. So that was the one I had in the morning. And
I think that's a great fish, mate, as well.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah, it was a wicked fish. And I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's a big one now. Yeah, you know, it really fought as well. I remember it really fighting, but I just wanted something special. But a week later, I had a night out. I was going out quite a bit then. And then a week after, and so I went down there, really hungover, went in an inlet where the water was gushing in, but really I knew I should have put the effort in. And I think now I would put the effort in, whereas back then, I never felt as desperate to put the effort in as I do now. You know, I now I realise what time I got, whereas back then it was just like, well, whatever. And then the week after that, we actually had James Turner's 30th birthday. Again, got battered. And I turned up really hungover, and I met Kieran for the first time, good friend of mine, and he was walking around with me. I said, do you want to do a night with me on the damn wall? And we just instantly clicked. And anyway, lovely social on the damn wall. I'd like midnight or whatever, boated my rigs out, he boated his rigs out, and then I think I only fished 2 rods that night, but I don't know, early doors it was because there was a mist on, and I caught a few with a mist on from there, like a real fog on. I just remember I had the ATTs at the time, and it was like wah in the brolly, and obviously you got brolly, grass, path, wall, up the slope, down the slope, sort of a almost like a concrete sort of base. Then you're in the water on your rods, and this fish had just waded right to left. Kited right to left, shallow water, and I ended up almost the other side of that damn wall, so right down there. Kieran sort of followed me, but I remember there was like drizzle in the air. There was no mist, that was that week, but there was like a lot of drizzle in, like really drizzly, proper conditions, and I was on the damn wall in the end for some reason, and he was down in the water. And I went, "Is it a good one?" And he went, "Yeah." Like he looked around, like smirking, and he netted it as he done it. And that was the fish at the time that was just a lin. I'd never even seen a picture of. I didn't know about it. And
this one at the bottom, yeah.
The one. This one here, yeah.
Incredible fish.
I put a few shots in there because I couldn't pick a favourite. But that's probably my favourite.
Yeah, well done, Tobes. Yeah. It's just mega, mate.
Yeah, that was, mate. I can't, you know, I'm not sure I'll ever catch a linear like that ever again, you know. And not because of the fish, but, well, the fish was amazing, but also where it lived and everything else, you know. So,
atmospheric shot as well, like the little view beyond to the lake.
Again, I didn't even own a camera at the time. It'd just sort of be like, I used to ring my barber mates and they'd come do the photos. So the 2 photos from the week before with them, some fishing mates took photos. Brad took a few photos. Kieran got his camera out and took them photos. Auto, no doubt, but Mate, you've done a wicked job.
Nonetheless, yeah.
No, mate, it was great. I couldn't be happier with them. I actually only got them shots like a year ago, and that was nearly 8 years ago. So I've only just got the shots. I had the sort of Facebook save sent over, but they're the proper ones. So it almost gives you another buzz. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was. I think that's a little worse for wear, that fish nowadays. It's not. I think
it's getting old.
Yeah, £29 it done. It was really small. But yeah, you know.
But big there. It looks big there.
Yeah, 36 I think.
Yeah.
It went up to 40 and then went the other way. I think it done 40 the year after that, but maybe dubious weighing, I'm not sure. It felt real full. It
looks plump there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't have seen it, you know. I did have them dodgy Reuben Heaton scales with a rust in them, but you know, I mean, it just, there's no point in me even saying that because it just doesn't matter, does it really?
No, well, you did say earlier you went through a phase of not weighing your fish at all.
After that, yeah, them scales didn't. I found out they didn't work when we were weighing up some bait, and I just stopped using scales for a long time after that. But yeah, that was sort of that fish there. That was the 31st, I think, of October or something like that. And I done one more night after that, blanked on the downwall, cold it was in November. And that would have been my 9th night, that last night. And then, yeah, I had this fire in my belly to go back to the otter pit, which I know I've jumped around, but that's when I went back and...
No, I mean, it does show that, you know, you're doing quite well on, you know, not a lot of time every year, aren't you? And obviously you're sort of out of fishing for a portion of time during a lot of these years.
That gave me a lot of confidence, that lake, you know. It was just a massive school pit in the sense that you fish it the same way. And I remember thinking at the time, my mate said to me, he was like, bloody hell, you're back into it, you're catching them. I actually messaged him and said, I think I've got this lake's number. And he said, come on, mate, don't be too...
cocky.
Don't be too cocky. But it carried on working. I messaged him saying, I think I've sussed this place. But yeah, it sounds big-headed.
What do you think the answer was? Because once you were
I was
using
very inexperienced at the time, but I knew how to fish that place because I'd fished Frogmore and old lakes and whatever else, and then go into the Lea Valley. I knew how to fish cray-infested gravel pits because we fished the Leather Pit and the Island Pit, and you know, from there you've got a sort of
a grounding.
Yeah. But I was still really inexperienced in the sense that. I'd had a lot of time off. Things had changed. I mean, wrap sticks had come about, and I don't remember them before. But also, I didn't actually start using them until not that long ago.
I was going to say, it doesn't really strike me as the sort of thing that would fit with your fishing anyway.
No, it was no. I didn't use them on Norvey, and I remember thinking I should have had them there, and that was not that long ago. Stupid, really, but no, you don't.
At least you
do it your own way, don't you?
Do you know who makes wrap sticks? Because you know.
Chorus, is it? So no, I obviously use them now, but but I think it was a free way of fishing. You know, I was all about just getting rigs to fish. That was the important thing. It wasn't about spots and all that kind of thing. Yeah, this spot thing sort of. I don't know if I'd never done much of that. Like even on the Leather Pit, it was gravel, but I'd be like, right, so you got gravel there, there's a sort of silt sort of indent there. I know it likes it there. I'll sling a couple of rigs there, and on the Leather Pit I used to, like, if I had a big bucket of particle, I'd go and wade it out, tip it in the silt, come back a week later, like whenever I could next get down, and I'd had times where I'd had like 2 takes, 11 carp in the lake, tricky as well, they were on edge, and that taught me the school pit, and that taught me about the baiting thing, but I did find it very confusing with the spots and the bars, and I knew where they were and whatever, but I never really could work out where I wanted to be on that bar at that point.
Yeah,
and that was later, sort of not later on, but the big pits it matters less, I think, and the smaller lakes. The Lea Pit, I felt like I knew what I was doing by that point. It was quite a bit later, but at the same time with the Lea Pit, it was very apparent you really had to be on a spot. You know what I mean? And you really wanted to fish the best bit of that spot, and that was just something that you learnt by accident. But the smaller lakes, it is more important, isn't it? Spots, line lay, that kind of thing. Not always, but
yeah. I mean, and you went. You know, your grounding was on a, you know, one of the most famous of its period. It must feel a little bit like there's a leather-shaped hole in your album, given that you did fish there.
Yeah. I was 5 years too late in the sense, or 5 years too early in my fishing, and the carp was never going to live that long. So I went for it when, I was 15 when I got in there after catching that school pit fish, and I caught. So me and Brad would catch loads at the island pit, and I caught the now big common. It's a 40-pounder now, but I caught it 17 pounds, so a long time ago. And then I went on to the school pit and sort of caught that. The pike pit didn't really interest me.
That's the long thin one, is it?
Yeah. So at the time, it didn't really interest me as much, but I sort of felt like, right, well, what am I waiting for now? Go and fish for the leather. And I saw it. Ian Bailey was fishing there, and the naked chod thing. That's
where he was really. That was his little naked chod era, wasn't it? Elstow pit 2, and the leather pit. Yeah.
And that I saw it, and I just thought that's good. That is, and I started fishing that in the weed and going up trees and looking at the hook bait, and I caught well out of Frogmore that year. I had the big common pretty quick.
Is that the one that you got a picture of?
Yeah. I put a picture up on there.
It's a wicked fish. That.
Yeah, I mean that's my PB for a very long time. Common, for years. I think years and years. Didn't help that I had a big break, but yeah, that if you bang it up, pre-kids it will be.
Yeah.
Frog. Night shot of a. So I'm wearing up. I think down. That was the common from the island pit. Where is it? Keep going. I've put the stings on there twice. That one. Yeah. So I thought it was a tench.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
I don't
a
know.
lovely fish.
It really scrapped, but I was just. I was up 3 a.m, and I was. But that was down the Summer Bay. You'll know the Summer Bay. Right down the bottom, and it was really busy, and I just went down there, plopped out a rig, and that was that.
And this is where you got the nickname as well.
The Heron, yeah, that was Ian Bailey. He, I used to have 5 waders, and I used to walk around the edge quite a bit, and you're like little Heron, mate, and that was that. I liked it, to be fair. I at the time it was all it did feel a little bit like bloody hell, we got someone in the magazines on our lake. We had James Turner a little bit later on become, we're not best friends, but I could ring him and have a good chat. And we on there he was good. He'd always come down, and late into the night he was so local and stuff. But I didn't know him from any magazines or anything like that. He actually bought a bloody drawing off. But they were good friends, weren't they? At the time, they were real always sort of. So it was a really good period. I mean, not only the locals down there and the people down there all the time. I met Tom Lorraine down there, Matt Townend, them two. And all the old boys.
What a great learning environment for you as well.
So good. They make you fry ups and stuff, and I could ponce pop ups and putty, and we were always so undergunned, me and Brad, but yeah, that was.
Did you ever get close to the leather?
Yeah. I got really close. So after Barry Adel caught it, I was there when he caught it, 36 pounds, so it was shrinking. Basically, there was a period where it was down this bay a lot, and it got really quiet where it was so small. And basically, I'd go down there during the week and put my 10 boilies in or whatever, making no difference. And I remember I put this rig out, and I was fishing from one of the bays, from one of the bars. So the bars where I actually caught fish from before.
Is there if you put a picture in
Yeah.
Have you set up on the bar? Yeah.
I had a really good year. I mean, I caught quite a few out of there that year. And there's only, there's only like 11 in there, but so if there's a shot on there of a rod like on like a bit of gravel, basically long story, we'd I kept seeing it feed on this like right in the edge down one of the finger bays, like your rig had to be like that far out, and that was it. Yeah, and the rig was just down there. I was doing I did 6 paper rounds every morning so I could get myself the cool rods and reels and all of that stuff.
Are you going full Terry at this point?
Full Terry, yeah. Some Heron rods, Tawneys, Matrix.
Nevs, yeah.
Were they Matrix bits? Yeah, Nevs, all that rubbish. And I had a rig like, I don't know, that far out. And I was sat there. It didn't know I was there. There's a shot of the lever from this session. You'll see it like flanking almost, or not flanking, but sort of twisting in the water. Big sort of grey lever. I haven't made this easy for you, but
That's what he loves it.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
That one. So basically that was where I was seeing it a lot. And this morning, right, first thing in the morning, I'm like that watching it, and you used to do that quite a lot,
Like a heron.
And it had come, and I was using the cheap boilies in the tackle shop, Verulam Angling. They were these Rod Hutchinson Tutti Frutti shelf lifes that have been in there for 20 odd years. Well, they were always in there.
Yeah.
And I've been going to this shop for years, and they were like rocks. And I remember like I was using that as bait, right, because it was cheap. And I put like 10 boilies around I should have fished fucking sweet corn or something. And it had come in and it had gone, and it sucked up like, I don't know, a third of these boilies, and like chewed for a minute and then just spat all of it out, right? And then it just sort of swam off. And that was as close.
That's a disaster.
That was as close as I know I got. I mean, I've pre-baited and caught multiple fish off the back of the point from the secret swim, but never. Yeah, you can't say how close you were. I had it show over me when I caught. There's a chestnut common. I had it show over me then.
Yes, a lovely fish. We should see that as well.
Yeah.
How big was that? How big was that common?
I don't think I weighed it, but
No,
I don't know.
Yeah.
20 pound, 21, 22, something like that.
That's
No.
a mirror, mate.
Close. It's the Cyprinus carpio.
No.
Not that
Down
one.
to-
Yeah, sorry. Again, you'll know it's like a big chestnutty thing. Big chestnutty mirror.
Keep going. Keep
common.
going.
There you go.
Yeah.
So-
Well done, Tobes.
So that one there was just one of the best commons ever. You know?
Yes, mate. Look at the head.
Yeah, they were all like that. We used to call them the brat packs. I
Yeah.
don't know who coined them that, but they were hard fighting, relatively small commons, 5 or 6 of them, swam around together, a couple of mirrors, the lever, that was the stock. And then the pond fish, tiny little thing, and then the spaz, which was like a mid-double or something. So, they were, I could have caught them forever and been happy at that point. I weren't really there for the lever. I was there to catch carp from the lever. That to me, that was like, I've caught carp from the lever lake. I used to walk around like I was the Don,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, it was all about them for me. And maybe if I had a different mindset at the time, I would have caught it. But in hindsight, get around that point, sit there, you know, could have done it that way. But you know what? I had so much fun on there, and I learned so much. I wouldn't have learned doing that. And, you know, I remember Tom and Lorraine had turned up. He went, "You're right, mate." As I've looked round, he's looked up. And as I've looked round to what he's looking at, I'd actually put a rig, a chod rig, on a submerged lily pad, because I had it in a silt and I kept dodging it. So I put it right on the path, like on this submerged lily pad, and this wicked looking common's just gone bang. I didn't see the take, and then jumped out of the water, which had tightened the line like a salmon or something. And then and I've got a photographer there, which was really hard. I mean, that one, again, being naive, I had no photographer. The lever had shown over me. I was in the middle swim, back of the bar, just copying what James Turner had done, to be quite honest, at the time. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, I had to sack that one up for about, I'd never do it now, but again, I was 16 or whatever. Sacked it up for a long time.
All night or whatever.
Oh, all night, yeah. And the rest, and then Stella Man come and done the best photos ever, and I'm glad I did. And that's still going to this day, that fish. So
Oh, they live forever, I think, those things.
yeah,
don't
they do. Yeah, they do, and they're real tricky to catch as well. So Frogmore built some bloody good foundations. So I'm glad for the lake. You know.
Do you ever drop by these days?
Yeah. Walked the dog there not long ago. I always romanticize about going back and just thinking, just go and have a bit of fun and just a bit of nostalgia. You know, there is a fish in the pike pit I never caught that's probably 30 to 33 pounds. And it's an old one. I photographed it for my mate under the ice. I jumped in and netted it. And I remember I didn't care about fishing at all at that point because I was out of it, but I went and done a night with my mate. And I just side hooked a boilie on a chod rig because I just didn't give a shit. I was there to have a couple of beers and catch up with my friend, you know. And I remember it froze over that night, so he had to help me retrieve the rig, and I was really embarrassed by the fact that he's seen this rig, even though you're a good mate and that. But that night he had that the big mirror that was quite similar to the School Pit one, to be fair, but he had that, and I remember I had to jump in the dark in the waders in the ice to like help him net it. I didn't have to, but got roped into it somehow. And I thought, I don't even like fishing. because I didn't at the time. I've side hooked a chod rig. It's frozen over, and now I'm up to here in water in a lake that it just went like that, and it'd be like 14 foot in the middle, and one step that way, I'm under the ice. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Do you know what I like about the story is that you started out with a target. You know, you were on a target lake. You may not have been fishing for the leather, but you were immersed in that culture, and here you are today, still. You know, or back, should I say, fishing for a single fish, still in the same culture. And the story has gone up and down in between as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's gone all over.
Yeah. Do you think do you see it changing again? Will you change again?
No doubt. You know, we're always changing for the better or for the worse, aren't we? So, you know, who knows? Who knows what I might... once I've sort of done, I don't even like saying once I'm done from this lake or that lake, because I don't like to close anything off, and it sounds almost like you want to get it done. But once I've done with the Met, I'll probably... no, I know I will. I've actually got a ticket in mind, but I know that I'm going to go somewhere like the Otter Pit, really quiet. I've got somewhere in mind. So I don't want to look forward to that too much, because there is otters on there. It's 150 odd acres, 2 lakes joined by a river, 2 fish I know about. One's amazing, one's pretty crap, you know. But I look forward to going somewhere where I can just get lost again, and I think that's probably what will happen.
All right. Well, mate, it's been very enjoyable to take a look back at your fishing and to explore the things that have made you the bloke that you are. So thank you very much, Jake.
Yeah, cheers for having me. Really enjoyed it. Cheers.